Take two.
Hey, we're heating it up.
On Dark Matter Radio.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Dark Matter.
That's the only way my poor little binky brain could handle it.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Oh yeah, bring it down, bring it down. Let's keep it cracking. Oh yeah. How you doing? All right, we're back. Fade to Black.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church.
All right. Okay, let's go. Let's get it cracking. Just posted right now on Twitter right now. That's bizarre. We've got some new intros coming in this week from Space Boy. Kovar's working on it now. This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition. It's so good to be back. So good. Welcome, everyone listening around the world. All right. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 135 days into the new year. That's right, it's Wednesday, Belgab. Live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California for KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Let's get this one cracking. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world that are fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. Space Boy. And you couldn't hear me right now. Think about it. All right. Yeah. Today, Ronald Isley, 73 years old. Yeah. You remember that Ronald Isley story I kind of blurted out on the air a few weeks ago? I don't know, a month ago. Ronald Isley is the only man to point a gun in my face and get away with it. Well, there hasn't been any others either. But yeah, Ronald Isley, 73 years old, used to be married to my good friend Angela Winbush. And he's 73 years old. Lead singer for the Isley Brothers and the possessor of a really large chrome handgun. And today, actor Judge Reinhold, check this out, Judge, 57 years old, who starred in probably the greatest movie of our generation, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Forget about Beverly Hills Cop or whatever those other movies were. None of that matters. It's all about Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Shot right here in the San Fernando Valley. And he played the infamous Brad Hamilton. Love you, Brad. All right, Judge, happy birthday. 57 years old. And it just seems like yesterday, doesn't it? When that movie came out and seriously became the poster for our generation. And a movie that I watch all the time. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Let's get Twitter cracking. Got the Twitter box open right here to my left. Follow, like, subscribe. We've got YouTube all updated. It's all done. Got the descriptions in there. Trust me, we read all of your email. And for that matter, got enough people here that stay on top of all of the posts that are done on Facebook or YouTube. What's weird, YouTube has like become this forum, this chat room. It's bizarre how it's all worked out. It's a different world out there, isn't it? Follow, like, and subscribe if you're over on Dark Matter right now, which you are because you are listening to me. Scroll up, like, subscribe, follow, and be part of that Twitter chat room that tends to blow up Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. Tonight, we're going to have open lines. Yes, Jim Mars is in the house, live from Texas. Call-in number is 323-825-5045. I'll let you know when the lines are open. As always, you know what to do. You can email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com, or you can go over to the contact page where we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. So if you want to do so in confidence, you can do so there. All email goes through the producers first before it gets to me. There's no secret email. There's no secret inroad into this studio. It doesn't exist. Does not exist. Last night, went over to UPARS in Studio City, and I just wanted to thank, Steve Murillo putting on a good show, Alex Mastreda, Terry, everybody over there, for Daryl Sims. It was a great time last night, and Daryl gave a great presentation, and they asked me, which it was off the cuff, but we put it together. It was all right. They pulled me aside and said, "Hey, man, you want to get up and talk about the Malibu discovery that you guys have done?" I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that. And also, can you introduce Daryl?" "Yeah, okay, all right, let's do it." So I was just, Daryl and I went out for coffee with his assistant, Jolene, right before the presentation. And, I had a great time. We actually went to Denny's, and there's pictures posted up on Facebook if you want to go check that out. It's kind of funny. So we go do that. I'm just looking for a mellow evening. I'm not exactly dressed up or have anything planned. We go over to UPARS, and they hit me with this. And so we were able to very quickly to put together a little presentation on the Malibu discovery. And I got up there. I don't know, it's a packed house. I don't know, 100, 150 people there. And there for Daryl, but it gave me an opportunity to present this evidence in front of a very educated crowd that UPARS is. And Steve Murillo puts on a really great event. So I get up there and do it. And I just have to say the crowd was shocked in disbelief that this discovery has been made. And for all of us out here in California with everything that has been going on off of the coast between Marina Del Rey and Catalina Island and up the coast to Malibu, these USOs and UFOs have been sighted for absolute decades. But the one thing that they, all the researchers and witnesses and photographers and videographers and, Bill Burns and everybody else, the one thing that's been missing, the missing link, has been this entrance, this USO underwater base, deep underwater base, a DUWB. I forget, please, whoever came up with DUWB first, DUWB, email me, I'll give you credit for it. But now it's the moniker is there, DUWB. So the Malibu DUWB is, it's real. It's there. And to have the reaction from everybody in the audience and coming up to me after the presentation was great. And it's relief. So now we'll be talking about that tonight with Jim Mars. Tomorrow night, Preston Dennett will be live here in the studio here at Fade to Black live, and we'll be talking about that too. Preston has been investigating this for years. And to hear Preston's reaction on the phone, and he sent me a follow-up email too, by the way. He sent me this email, "Jimmy, I'm in shock. I told you. Well, he's been screaming about this for years. And so tomorrow night, Preston Dennett will be in here. So I wanted to thank Daryl Sims, Jolene, Steve, Alex, Terry, everybody over at UPARS. That was a great night last night, and had a good time. And Alex, by the way, I know you're listening. Thanks for your new book, and I did see the autograph on the inside after I got home last night. Very cool. Thank you. All right. Now, everybody, Contact in the Desert. This is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, seminars, weekend getaways for ufology that occurs all year long. It's one of the biggest. And we are doing a contest here at Fade to Black. So, this is what you do. You go over to jimmychurchradio.com. You can go over there right now. And if you scroll down, you'll see a little thing there. It says Contact in the Desert. Win a pass to Contact in the Desert from Fade to Black and Jimmy Church. It's right there. You click on that, and that'll take you over to the Fade to Black page where you can enter your info and get in on this. This is a $400 full 4-day weekend pass to Contact in the Desert. Now, if you you check out this guest list of presenters that weekend, you've got George Norrie. I'm going to say it out loud. It's okay. It's okay. Don't freak out. George Norrie, Giorgio Tsoukalos, Eric Von Daniken, Steve Greer, David Wilcock, Michael Tellinger, who we're going to have on the show Friday, Jim Mars, who is on the show tonight, ironically enough, Nick Pope, who we had on the show last month, John Anthony West, another guest of the show, Jason Martell, another guest, Linda Moulton Howe, we're going to have her on in a couple of months, David Sarita, Richard Dolan, James Gilliland, Stephen Bassett, Laura Eisenhower, Jesse Martell, Nick Redfern, Mike Barra, Travis Walton, Yvonne Smith, Marshall Klarfeld, who we had on the show last week. That was a great show. It's the Robert Salas, Donald Schmidt, Alejandro Rojas. We're going to have him on the show, too. Dr. Lynn Katay. I've always wanted her on the show. We're trying to work that out. But it's Gerald Clark. I'm just going through. It's an extraordinary weekend. Everybody that you've ever wanted to have, you can actually do it all in one place. So the contest is there. You just click on that, and it'll take you right over. It says, Win a Pass to Contact in the Desert from Fade to Black with Jimmy Church. But the really cool thing is we are going to broadcast from there on Friday night, August 8th. So the show will be done from Contact in the Desert in Joshua Tree. And everybody's going to be walking up and down the hallways there at the retreat center, and we will have on everybody that's walking by. We'll get everybody on the mic that night. But it's going to be a fun time. I'll be there. So enter the contest. Enter it, please, because I want all the fans to come out and hang out with us in Joshua Tree. It's going to be an amazing weekend. So there you go. Now, also over at jimmychurchradio.com, we have the pictures up tonight for Jim Mars. If you scroll down, it's in his normal spot, in the guest spot down below. Just scroll down. He sent us, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 photographs that we're going to be discussing tonight on the show. And also, we still have, we're going to keep this up for a while because of the press releases that have gone out. But if you haven't heard about it yet, there it is. The massive deep underground base discovered off of Malibu. And, special thanks to Rizzo, Dale, Romero, Maxwell. Thank you. This is potentially, since Area 51, when that was announced, this could be that big. It's that explosive. So that article is still up. We've got a special report. One of the things that kept coming up last night at UPARS was how far underwater is it? We're working on those measurements. Okay, from the top of the ocean right there down to the top of the roof of this entrance. How far underwater is it? So we're working on those measurements. We're going to get that. That is, it was one question after another. How far underwater? Had quite a few people last night offer to scuba dive So we want to know, is it 100 feet? Is it 50 feet? Is it unreachable by scuba diving? So we're going to work on that, and we're going to find out exactly how far under the water it is. And a couple of people did come up last night that were aware of this. Oh, by the way, everybody that came up last night, I couldn't believe how many people listened to the show that were at UPARS last night. One after another. Great job. Great job. Love the show. Love the show. So to everybody that came up to me last night, can't remember everybody, but thank you. That was very, very cool. Humbling, actually. But that measurement, we're going to get to that. We will figure out a way to get out to this base and figure out what's going on. We've got a lot of interest and a lot of people that are willing to help and get out there and check it out. Okay, so that's that. That was last night. UPARS was great. Again, everybody that came out to say hi, I'm saying hi live right now. Thank you. It was awesome. And I met a really interesting guy last night, Chuck. Chuck, if you're listening right now, you the man. Got to get Chuck on the show. Okay, so with that, let's get to some quick email before I get to the news. Email. Hi, Jimmy. Love the show. Like you with John Teeter, I have been fascinated about misplaced people like the man from Tarat who appeared in Japan in 1954. That is a great story, by the way, one that I will cover very shortly on one of the shows. I am wondering, do you think there might be fractal John Teeters from alternate timelines like this man appeared to be? The country he claimed to be from is where the country of Andorra is. If you look at a website for Teeter, show dates with John 1 and 2, as if there are now 2. There's more than 2. I've got an email from probably 6. There seem to be several examples of misplaced people. One in 1851 claiming to be from Laxaria on the continent of Sakira. Another one in Paris in 1905 who spoke with an unknown language claiming to be from Lisbia. Take it easy. Keep it cracking. Rick. And all of this is great. And it's funny how, listeners can compile and get all of this information together and get it all in one email in one spot. Allows me, this is it. This is bespoke radio. Allows me to go and do some quick investigating with the folks here and put all of these pieces together too as well. Thank you for that, Rick. And keep the guest requests coming. Keep it coming. I read it all. I really do. And one of the examples of that will be next Thursday. Next Thursday, Blake Cousins. Blake Cousins and Dr. J. Andy Ilias, his producer. We'll have them both on the show next week. We're going to have Blake on for the full 2 hours from Hawaii. And that particular night, they also do a radio show of their own. So as soon as the good doctor, John Andy, wraps his show, which it ends when our show starts. So he's going to take a breather, have a cool drink, and then join us here with Blake. And that's going to be great. And so that's next Thursday. And that only, where that comes from? That comes from all of the email that came in. All of the posts, everything else. Get Blake, we're cool with Blake. And so am I. So next Thursday, Blake. So keep the requests coming. There are so many emails here. I could sit here and read off Jimmy. How about this, guest? How much? And do it. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. If we can book them. Somebody sent an email. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was Brad. If I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry, but said, hey, man, get Dave Mustaine on the show. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. Mustaine would be a great guest. I haven't seen him in a while, but we have many mutual friends, and he should be easy enough to chase down. He would love to come on the show. Sure of that. So there you go. That comes from you. Okay? So keep it coming. All right. Again, I do want to thank Marshall and Dale, Romero, and Rizzo. That's a good team. Marshall, Romero, and Rizzo. Sounds like some kind of some kind of private detective agency, which is exactly what they are doing. So with that, let's take a quick break. When I come back, we'll do the news. This is Fade to Black. Don't forget, tonight, Jim Mars. Tomorrow, Preston Dennett and Steve Allen. The Stevensville Lights tomorrow night. It's going to be really cool. Preston Dennett live in the studio. Friday, Michael Tellinger. Michael just winged it up from South Africa to Halifax up in Canada. So won't be South Africa. It's going to be Halifax. Just as treacherous. It's going to be really cool. Next week, Joshua P. Warren. Oh, yeah. And then Thursday night, of course, Blake Cousins. With that, I'm going to take a quick break. Don't touch that mouse. This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition. KJCR. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Tonight, Jim Mars. Tomorrow, Preston Dennett and Steve Allen. Friday, Michael Tellinger. Next week, Joshua P. Warren, Blake Cousins. Good stuff, good stuff. All right, let's get to the news. Trending on CNN right now before the show. You ready? Primaries. Michael Jace. Don't care. Porn bust. Don't care. Ear biting. Don't care. Happy. Don't care. Donald Sterling. Sort of care. Macklemore. And a $4.5 billion divorce. That's what's trending right now on CNN. I'm not going to let this go. Not one word about MH370, nothing on the entire homepage, once again. And to me, the breaking news, which is big on MH370, we'll be talking to Jim Mars about this in a little bit, is that they're looking to release, finally, all of the data. All the radar data, everything. This is big news. Finally, some independent people can look at this stuff. Some real people, and that's big news. That's not one word on CNN. Unbelievable. But you know what? The headline is still the same for me. Pings are gone, plane is gone, debris is gone. No more nothing. No more planes. The search is over. We've got some bluefin out there. You know, I wonder what the reach is from side to side on that side scan sonar. I mean, how much are they searching every single day with that thing? Not much when you have an ocean as big as that. Consider it over. They won. I heard this report today that that MH370 might have been shot down in a war game, live firing exercise that was going on, and there was a couple of guided missile destroyers, United States, sitting out there too as well. Wouldn't that have been? It's just nuts. All right. Google has leapfrogged past Apple as the world's most valuable brand. Didn't see that one coming, did you? At least that's the assessment of the annual study by Millward Brown, a communications company that ranks Google as the world's most popular brand, topping Apple, which has held that top spot, by the way, for the last 3 years. According to the 2014 Brand's Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brand ranking, Google rose 40% last year to $159 billion. Apple, meanwhile, slipped 20% to $148 billion. I went over to Alexa.com, started punching in websites, including my own. And yeah, that's it. Google, number one. Yeah, you should go check it out. You should go over to Alexa one day. And you can go and see website rankings around the world. But just go to, like, you can type it in real time and see who's linking into the site, get all the stats and what's going on. Go check out where YouTube is. Go to CNN. Just anything that you can think of above top secret. Go rank rents. He's been dropping. But it's all there. Go to Alexa. Alexa's a wonderful thing to just hang out, punch in websites. From above top secret today, really cool article. The only email system the NSA can't access. When NSA surveillance broke last year, that it sent, that they're monitoring everything, the good folks up at CERN in Switzerland started tripping out. 3 particle physics laboratory guys got together in a restaurant there. It's called Restaurant Number 1 at CERN, and started freaking out. So they have a Facebook page. It's called Young at CERN Facebook group. He posted a message, and I quote, he said, "I'm very concerned about the privacy issue, and I was wondering what I could do about it." And the next thing you know, all of these young lads up there put together their own email service. It's called Proton Mail. They are getting 10,000 requests a day for this email service. So much so that you can get your account, but it won't be activated right now. But the NSA, because of the encryption that they're using at the front and the back of this and what is going down the internet, they can't track it. There you go. It's called Proton Mail. Go check that out. Now, you remember the I gotta get through this news, man. That Proton rocket from Russia that blew up last week. Go check out the new video that's been posted in slow motion. It's a little object that cruises in from right to left and intercepts this thing. I don't know what it is. That means it's a UFO. It's nuts, and it takes a little turn and smacks right in front of the rocket. And then it explodes. You've got to go check out the video. I don't know what it is before you go, Jimmy. But it's there. It's pretty trippy. Led Zeppelin is being sued for Stairway to Heaven. Have you heard about this? It's insane. Now, the band Spirit, which was a great band actually, Randy California, the lead guitar player of the band, they were touring with Zepp, opening up for Zepp. And in 1968, they released an album, and he had an instrumental on the album. It's a song called Taurus. Obviously, Jimmy Page heard this. When you listen to this track, Taurus, you will think it's Stairway to Heaven, like a demo version. It's pretty trippy. And it's breaking my heart. It's just like, man, no, say it ain't so, Joe. Please, the greatest rock song in the history of music looks like it was plagiarized. And the proof that you have to do in court with something like this is very simple. You take a person off the street, you put him on the stand, you play him the track, and you say, what does that remind you of? Oh, it sounds like Stairway to Heaven. Boom, gavel falls. That's it. It's over. Now, are they going to be able to collect 40 years of royalties going back to 1970 when this was released? No, it's not. Statute of limitations. But it looks like they can collect about 3 years of profits. But you know what you do get? You get your name on the song from here on out as the songwriter. Unbelievable. Randy died a long time ago, but it's Mark Andes, the bass player, the original bass player from Spirit. There he is. He's the founding bass player. He's got his attorney, and they're going after it. And I'm telling you right now, the writer for Stairway to Heaven, the co-writer, is going to be Randy California. And that is some crazy, crazy breaking news. All right. With that, I got to get out of here. It's bottom of the hour. Jim Mars is waiting. Tonight, Jim Mars. Tomorrow, Preston Dennett and Steve Allen. Friday, Michael Tellinger. Next week, Joshua P. Warren and Blake Cousins. This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't touch that mouse. When we come back, Jim Mars. Stay with us, everybody.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. This is the Wednesday edition. Get your email going. Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You can do it through the website, contact page, Twitter, at JChurchRadio. Jim Mars is a Texas journalist and author of 4 New York Times best-selling books. His latest book, Our Occulted History, concerns the origin of humankind and the possibility of extraterrestrial intervention. A native of Fort Worth, Texas, Jim Mars earned a degree in journalism from the University of North Texas and attended graduate school at Texas Tech in Lubbock. He has worked for several Texas newspapers, including the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, where beginning in 1968 he served as a police reporter and general assignments reporter, covering stories locally in Europe and the Middle East. After a leave of absence to serve with the 4th Army Intelligence Unit during the Vietnam War, he became a military and aerospace writer and an investigative reporter. Mars has appeared on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and C-SPAN, the Discovery Channel, Learning, and History channels, Good Morning America, Geraldo, Montel Williams, The Today Show, Tech TV, Larry King Live, Art Bell, Alex Jones, Jeff Rentz, among many others. I would like to welcome to the program, right now, live from Texas, Mr. Jim Mars. Jim, welcome to Fade to Black.
Howdy, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's great to have you on. Thank you very much. We've got a long road ahead of us tonight. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. And again, thank you. I am humbled, and we've got a very smart audience. They're chomping at the bit. So let's get straight to it. You ready?
Oh, as we say in the JFK assassination research community, shoot.
I almost hate to start off like this, but an email just popped up from the producers just as you said that. And it says, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know. But it says, a very pointed question about the JFK assassination. And I didn't want to go here just yet But it's called synchronicity, Jim. And when you say it and it pops up, maybe we need to go here. You know what I mean?
Well, why not? After all, that's the granddaddy of all murder mysteries, and it's still a mystery, and there's still a lot of controversy and questions about it. And I try to tell people that if you will carefully and in-depth study the Kennedy assassination, then your mind will be opened up to all kinds of government skullduggery.
Well, this is the thing. When talking about things like, the Apollo moon hoax and other deceptions, 9/11 and other things that have gone on with our government, and people go, how could they pull this off? How can you silence so many people? And I just go, look at Roswell, number one. Number two, Kennedy. Look at that. There's a lot of people involved there, and we've gone through, I don't know how many committees and investigations and everything else, and movies and websites and video and that is, nobody has come forward. They've managed to.
Au contraire.
Well, but if you, before we go there.
A lot of people have come forward. In fact, that's the whole problem. Jimmy, you got to understand that there's never been a cover-up in the Kennedy assassination in the classic definition of cover-up, meaning that you can't get to any information. In the Kennedy assassination, it's been quite the opposite. It's been cover-up by obfuscation.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
There's been so much stuff coming out, so many theories, so many people talking, so much stuff happening that the average guy goes, oh, man, it's hurting my brain. I don't want to hear any more about it. And that's the cover-up.
Do you, before I get to this question, and again, I haven't read it yet, and it looks to be a little bit long, and it's from our good friend Lou here. You probably know Lou yourself. But anyway, who did it? Who was the trigger man?
All I know for certain is that I didn't do it.
You're so close. You're in Texas. Do you ever, how many times have you been down to Dealey Plaza and just checked it out for yourself?
I can't even count it.
Right.
Can't ever count it. But I'll tell you, for those of your listeners who've never been to Dealey Plaza in Dallas, I guarantee you, I've heard this from everybody. The very first impression is, holy cow, this is just a small little place.
Exactly.
And it is. It's not near the big park area that it looks like in the photographs.
No, I've been there a couple of times, and I will never forget the first time I went there. A friend of mine took me straight there. I said, man, I got to go to Dealey. And we, turn a couple of corners, and we're there. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like your neighbor's front yard is what it looks like. It is very small. And when you look at that corner where the motorcade takes the left-hand turn in front of the depository right there, you look, and how could you not know everything that went on there? Because it's so small. I mean, everybody was on top of each other. It's incredible to me that the answers weren't there in front of everybody like that very day.
Well, they were. That's the whole thing. I taught a course on the Kennedy assassination for 30 years at the University of Texas at Arlington. And every year I'd watch it. So it's all still fresh in my mind because every summer or every fall, every spring, I was watching those newsreels all over again. I probably got some of them memorized. And so it's still fresh in my mind. And then years ago, I stepped off the distance between where the person was on the grassy knoll to the middle of the street where Kennedy's headshot took place. And that was 26 meters. Okay, that's like 26 yards, basically. I mean, you probably could have made that shot with a pistol.
Right.
Plus a rifle with a scope.
Right. I stood there and I looked up to the fourth floor window, right there, and I looked down to the street, and I had often thought what everybody else thinks. Okay, it's a long ways away. It's a rifle shot, and rifle. You can be an expert sharpshooter, but it's still difficult to get a clean shot off. But when you're that close, it's just right there. It's I'm not saying an amateur could pull it off. But it's not only where the book depository window is, it's anywhere in Dealey Plaza.
Well, you can't get to that window anymore because they put that museum up there and they've got it plexiglassed off. they wouldn't even let Oliver Stone film from that window.
Oh, they wouldn't?
You know why? Because I was in that window for years before they did all this, and from that window to the point in the street where the first shots were fired, there's a tree intervening in the line of sight.
Well,
you couldn't do it.
Well, it's not only that, Jim, and I'm sure you can paint a better picture than I can, but from any grassy spot, forget about the grassy knoll, but right where the motorcade was, where that sidewalk is, on both sides of the street, everybody was 5-10 feet from the president, and if you were a long ways away, you were 40 feet away. You were right on top of that motorcade, and anybody could have shot from anywhere. It was just incredible to me how small that area really, really was. Okay, let me get to this question, and it says, okay, Jimmy and Mr. Mars, I would prefer, and again, I'm reading this off the cuff, so go with me on this. I would prefer an honest answer with a promise to research the question and to provide the answer rather than a glib disagreement right now. Okay, all right, I'll go with that. The doctor quoted below says the fact that Kennedy's head rocketed backwards after the shot to the left of his head is attributable to the human anatomy, which causes the below discussed reaction, i.e. so many nerves in Kennedy's head were stimulated at the moment of impact that the stronger nerves pulling the head back overpowered the simultaneously reacting nerves that would pull the head forward, this suggesting a headshot from the front, whereas the forward head jerk is probably attributable to the stronger, more numerous impulsive impulses pulling Kennedy's head then backwards and actually further suggest the shot from behind. Okay, and so this is a quote from Larry Sturtevant. Do you know who Larry is?
Yeah, that name sounds familiar.
Okay. He said the tissue inside the skull was being moved around. It caused a massive amount of nerve stimulation.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so, okay. Well,
it's called the jet effect. Okay?
Right.
And they came up with that, trying to argue that, well, when the bullet goes in, then the compressed brain matter and fluids and stuff shoot out, and so it forces the head backwards, even though he got shot from the rear. And I'm here to tell you that's a bunch of bullpucky, That's just somebody theorizing and trying to explain something that they don't want to go to the plain old physics, which is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
I have never shot. I'm from Texas. I've shot guns my whole life. I've shot everything from beer cans to deer to javelina, and I've never seen one that you shoot jump towards you. It just doesn't happen. Okay, you've got the momentum of the bullet, and it pushes you on. This is just some more scientific babble, to try to explain things. And this is the thing that really gets me about the Kennedy assassination. They made people disbelieve their own eyes, okay? One of the key witnesses, Sam Holland, said he heard a shot from behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll, saw smoke drifting out from under the grassy knoll, and they said, so, where'd you think the shot came from? He said, well, I thought it came from behind the fence on the grassy knoll. And they said, is that where you think now? He said, well, no, now I guess it came from the depository. Well, why do you say that? He said, well, because the government investigated. That's where they said the shot came from. They make people disbelieve their own eyes, and now they're making the public disbelieve, just common sense. And let me tell you, this is the oldest trick in the book. I start off my book with a quote from Adolf Hitler that he wrote in Mein Kampf, which was written back in the 1920s. And what he said was, the great masses of the people will more easily fall victims to a great lie than a small one. And then he went on to explain in his book, Mein Kampf, that everyone basically wants to be honest. Most people. Now, you got a handful of criminals and, psychopaths and stuff, but most people want to be honest. And so, therefore, in our day-to-day lives, we really try not to tell too many lies. We all do. But, if your wife come home and says, look at this new hat I just bought, what do you think? You better say it looks nice, right? You don't tell her what you really think. But anyway, so we're all used to little lies. But most people would never think about trying to tell a gigantic lie to a bunch of people. And therefore, when somebody has the chutzpah to stand up and tell you a great big lie, most people go, well, it must be the truth, because they would never lie that big about anything. And that's what they're counting on. That's what we got in the Kennedy assassination. That's what we got on 9/11. That's what we've gotten about UFOs. That's what we've gotten about so many topics. The big lie.
With I saw two things interesting over the last when the anniversary hit and the documentary started to come out. There was two that contradicted themselves, but I found interesting. And one of them was a documentary about him being shot from behind by one of the Secret Service agents that had pulled out a gun and armed it, a rifle, an AR-15, I think, and shot him accidentally from the back of the limousine.
Now, before you go on with that one, let's stop right there. Okay, you yourself just got through saying, and you're absolutely correct, that there were people standing there within 6 feet, 8 feet,
right.
10 feet away.
Right.
Okay? Did even one of them say, oh, by the way, the Secret Service agent back there shot him?
Right.
No, because it didn't happen.
Right. And then exactly, and it was a compelling documentary, but then right after that, I'm watching another documentary about the limo driver turning around and shooting him. And so you have these two completely opposite sides of the fence claims, number one, with their own evidence that's presented. But my question is, in the Zapruder film, as I think all the frames are accessible and we've all seen it, the limo driver didn't turn around and shoot him in the head, did he? Or has the... Of
course not. No, both of those. Again, those are just diversions. Those are red herrings. In my latest updated version of Crossfire, the plot that killed Kennedy, if you'll look in the picture section, that would be on page 303, you will find a blow-up of Zapruder frame 314. This is supposedly the driver shooting Kennedy, and what you'll see is that what some people have seen in bad copies of the Zapruder film as a gun that he's turning around, firing with his left hand over his right shoulder, is actually just the sunlight reflecting off the hair grease of Roy Kellerman, who's sitting next to him. It's his top of his head, and you can see that. I published that in the new version of Crossfire. No, a Secret Service agent behind him did not shoot him, and no, the driver did not shoot him. Although I will add that there were some actions taken and not taken by the Secret Service that I think demand further investigation, although it may be too late now. For example, the driver, Greer, his hands never really left the steering wheel. In fact, in a photograph I just referred to, you can see that he's not firing a gun. He has his hands on the steering wheel. But according to his testimony to the official government committee, he said he didn't even know the assassination happened. He never looked around, didn't see Kennedy, and that it was only after Roy Kellerman next to him said, we've been hit, getting us out of here, that they stepped on the gas and that they roared off out of Dealey Plaza. This is not what the photographic record shows. Photographic record, thanks to the Nix film, shows that right after the first shot, contrary to Secret Service procedures, which is get the president out of danger, he hit the brakes. The brakes come on, the car came to almost a complete stop. And at that time, he turns and looks over his right shoulder directly at Kennedy. And only after the fatal headshot is delivered does he face front, the brake lights come off, and the car accelerates out of there.
With that and that happening, that's like the first couple of, no-nos as you start to compile where everything just went wrong with the Kennedy assassination. That's the beginning of it. But for me, there's a couple of other things where you push forward. And not only that, but, Jack Ruby and how Russia and Mexico's involved and where Oswald went. Obviously, a lot of people knew about, Oswald being there and something was going to go down that day in Dallas. No doubt about it. But I
think so.
Yes. And then when you move forward, though, for me, this is where it gets just a little bit crazy. is, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, and I don't know as much about the assassination as you do, but what I do know is the stuff that makes me go, come on. And one of them is 2 hours later, the president's been shot and he's been whisked away. He's in a hospital. They're operating on him. You've got everything that's going on between D.C. and Dallas and the police and everything. Dallas is just in an uproar. But an hour, 120 minutes goes by in the blink of an eye in a case like this, where you've got every law enforcement guy bumping into each other all over Dallas. And somehow they managed to find Oswald 2 hours later in a dark theater. And that's where my BS meter goes off the charts. Just completely haywire, because they knew he was there. And so what do you say to that? That's the one thing that just unravels.
You're absolutely right. There were so many other things. I'll tell you the two things that got me going that very weekend. And keep in mind, I was a grown man. I was in college at the time. Sophomore, and on a degree for journalism, and this happened right in my backyard. Happened there in Dallas, which I went to almost every weekend. I mean, I knew what was happening here, and I was paying attention. And the first thing that got my attention was they had the local TV station was grabbing anybody they could who had been in Dealey Plaza and brought them into the station and interviewed them live on TV. And all of these witnesses all said the same thing. Said there was one shot, and then there was a pause, and then there were two shots right on top of each other, kind of a pow, pow, pow. Okay, and then later that afternoon, they came out and said, well, we've got this guy arrested. It's Oswald, and he had this old bolt-action Italian war rifle. And I'm going, wait a minute, because at that time, again, I'm grown. I'd been deer hunting. I knew bolt-action rifles. And you can't get a pow-pow with a bolt-action rifle. You have to cock the bolt, eject the empty shell, load the new one in. The best you can do with a bolt-action rifle is pow, pow, pow.
Right.
That's as good as you're going to get. And
right.
That's not even aiming. That's just squeezing the trigger and pulling the lever.
Right.
So I'm going, wait a minute, and then, but I didn't have anything to put in its place, and I was going, I guess the authorities know what they're doing. But then on Sunday morning, when I'm up there watching TV, and they said they were going to transfer Oswald about 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock came and went, and they hadn't done it. Got to be about 11 o'clock, and then got to be about 11:20, and finally they said, here he comes. And they bring him down handcuffed, spread eagled between two cops, one handcuffed to his right, and one handcuffed to his left. And they march him through the basement of the police station, and Jack Ruby steps out and shoots him. And I just went, wait a minute. One lone nut I can buy, but not two lone nuts, and one that operates in the basement of the police station. And so I never was satisfied with the official story from that moment on, although I really had nothing to put in its place. But my real moment of epiphany did not come until the fall of 1972, when Eugene McCord, one of the Watergate burglars, finally fessed up to the judge. He said, well, okay, yes, actually I'm working for the committee to reelect the president, which was Nixon's committee. And at that point, it suddenly came and just, hit me like a sack of potatoes that the president of the United States would lie to us. And that's when everything began to open up, and I began to understand how things really operate.
With my little brain and looking at all of the evidence, and you start to read about, Bush, Herbert being in the CIA back then, and his possible involvement and his knowledge of what was going on, and all the way through the 60s, and like you're saying, up to 72, 73, the tangled web that was right there in front of us. And they thought, and this is just me thinking out loud, but they thought shooting Oswald was going to shut up what he knew about everything and that they could close the book on it. And you're absolutely right. I mean, they shot him then. That was it. That was over. And
I believe it was Alan Dulles, the long-serving CIA director. That was another thing that got me even back at the time, was that Alan Dulles had been fired as the director of the CIA because of the Bay of Pigs invasion and the fact that Kennedy felt like he had been snowballed and misled about that invasion. And so he fired the head of the CIA, Alan Dulles. And then Dulles turns around and is named by Johnson to sit on the panel to figure out what happened to Kennedy. It was a classic case of putting the fox in charge of the hen house.
That's right.
But Alan Dulles, in one of the Warren Commission meetings, said they said something about, maybe we shouldn't be putting this down. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. He said, nobody's going to be reading this anyway except a few professors, years from now. And that's what they truly thought. You're absolutely right, Jimmy. They thought that, we silenced Oswald and the lone nut's killed by another lone nut, and that's the end of that. In their wildest imaginations, they never thought, and they could not possibly conceive, that 50 years later, junior high school students would have computers and could blow up those photographs and look in the backgrounds and could call up information just, with a few keystrokes and put it all together and see what they were doing.
What do you put into the whole UFO disclosure aspect to this too as well?
Well, I'm not sure what you meant by what do I put into disclosure. You mean
with
is it happening? Is it going to happen?
No.
With
Kennedy, and supposedly he was going to come forward
about the UFOs. Well, I'll tell you what. When that first topic kind of cropped up, and I guess maybe it goes pretty far back, maybe even in the 70s. Most people, and myself included, kind of laughed that off. Because I really did not think there could possibly be any serious UFO question in the Kennedy assassination, but I have changed my tune, okay? Because, yes, we now know that Kennedy, in fact, there is a document from some unit called the Interplanetary Unit, if you can believe that, and I thought that sounded pretty far out, but it turned out there really was such a unit, and this was back in the 40s at the time of the Roswell crash. And in their report, written at that time, they actually came out and talked about, the dead ETs, and the fact that there were 2 crash sites in landing zone 1, landing zone 2, and they really spelled it out. And with all the subsequent years and investigations, it tends to support this interplanetary phenomenon unit. And in the back of their report, again, written in 1947, they said one of the few members of Congress who knew the truth of the situation was Representative John F. Kennedy of Massachusetts, and said he apparently had a source within the Secretary of the Air Force office, okay?
Right.
And so isn't that interesting? So, yes, Kennedy was one of the few presidents who was actually knowledgeable about the reality of the UFO situation. And, in fact, there is a document signed by Kennedy in October of 1963 where he was ordering the head of the CIA to turn over all its UFO files to the White House. Well, anybody knows anything realizes this would be tantamount to making it public, because the White House leaks, and whatever it is, you'll find somebody can talk about it. And so, and he gave the CIA director until February the 1st, 1964, to comply with this and turn over all the UFO files. Well, of course, in November, he's killed, and that never happened, and those files were never released to the White House, and that was the end of that.
With the other thing that is shocking with Kennedy, good-looking guy, smart guy, great family, great pedigree, Camelot, all of that. You can put all of that on one column. But on the other column, there's a list of potential suspects that is as long as your arm. And it could have been anyone. He had a lot of, not enemies, that's not the right word, but he certainly.
No, it's the right word.
Well, you know, and he was certainly pissing off quite a few people,
Well,
and countries and organizations. You know, it's.
Yeah. Well, I'm always asked, well, what's the bottom line? What's the Kennedy assassination in 25 words or less? And to put it in its broadest possible interpretation, John F. Kennedy really thought he was president, and he was shaking up the status quo, and the status quo struck back. Now, they kept us off balance for years by all the researchers arguing with each other and unable to present a united front. The thing that almost everyone who's actually investigated the assassination, the thing they'll agree on is that there were more than one shooter, so more than one assassin. Well, that, by dictionary definition, is a conspiracy. And the fact that the conspiracy has been covered up for 50 years at the level of the federal government means somebody in the federal government was involved. So this is the proof of the whole pudding. This shows that this was, at that time, legally, there were no federal laws about assassinating the president. At that time, it was simply another Texas homicide. And yet, when you look at all of the destruction of evidence, suppression of evidence, alteration of evidence, fabrication of evidence, intimidation of witnesses, all of these are crimes. If you and I committed those acts in connection with a murder case, we'd be subject to prison, okay? In fact, it would make us accessories after the fact. And I know in Texas, we've actually executed accessories after the fact.
Yeah.
Because under the law, if you aid and abet, then you're just as guilty as the person that pulls the trigger. And this is what elevates the Kennedy assassination from another Texas homicide to a national coup d'etat.
There's one thing that's a fact, Mr. Mars. If you're going to break the law, just don't do it in Texas. Don't do it in Texas.
We have a dim view of lawbreakers.
Yes, you do. Now, this is another angle, and I'm going to present this to you. But I've thought about this so much. Nobody has talked about this. What if, just what if, there was 2 or 3 people there that didn't know each other that were all there to kill the president, and they didn't know about the other guy? I think you're
onto something. I think that's probably true. In fact, I was talking with Jerry Patrick Hemmings, who was one of the Bay of Pigs invaders and working for the CIA, and he had even come under suspicion as maybe being one of these guys that they would have put up to do an assassination. And he told me that he was actually in the White House when he was offered money to assassinate Kennedy. And he said he turned it down. He said, but he knew of other groups who collected money for doing the job, but they didn't even do the job.
Right.
And I think that's part of the cover-up, and this is a brilliant move on whoever planned all this, is that they did get several groups involved to the point to where even the people involved don't know for sure what happened and who did what and who got the weapon and who got the money and where'd the money go and on like that.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a French assassin, this is all detailed in my book, Crossfire, that was whisked out of Dallas that very afternoon. And the federal government, the investigators, so you got to understand, the government does not act monolithically. The right hand often doesn't know what the left hand's doing.
Right.
And particularly when it comes to the military and comes to the intelligence communities and intelligence agencies, because they're very compartmentalized. So, one little section does one thing and the other little section doesn't know who it is. That's just like the Navy got involved because Oswald was a Marine, which made him part of the Navy Department. And so that made him he came under suspicion there that perhaps he was one of these military guys who had been sheep dipped. In other words, that's what they call it when you say you're supposedly out of the military, but actually you're still working for them, when he went to Russia. And they sent him over there to do some spy work. And in fact, there was a government investigator who was investigating these phony American traitors, that tried to defect to Russia. And just as he got in the summer of 1963, and just as he was getting to Lee Harvey Oswald, his whole little unit and office was shut down, the door was locked, and he was told to go home. So, see, they didn't even know. Here's one for you. I don't know if you know about this, Jimmy, but what do you think about this? In 1960, 3 years before the assassination, and even before Kennedy had gotten elected president, J. Edgar Hoover himself sent a memo to the Security Division of the State Department warning that someone was using Lee Harvey Oswald's birth certificate. And in other words, posing as Oswald. And he wanted to know if they had any information on Oswald. Now, first off, I don't know if you can remember those times. I'm not sure how old you are. But at the time of the assassination, we were told frequently and firmly that nobody in the federal government ever knew anything about Oswald. He just slipped between the cracks.
Right.
Weren't paying any attention to him. And here's shows that J. Edgar Hoover personally was aware of Lee Harvey Oswald 3 years before the assassination, and in the context of believing that somebody was impersonating him. How incredible is that?
Exactly. And I've often wondered, all of those assassins that were, they were all gathering together that morning in Dealey Plaza. And so they split.
They had an operatives meeting,
right?
Association meeting.
And so they go back and they go, "Oh, okay. So what happened?" Well, I think I got him, but I started shooting, and so did everybody else.
I know. I was about to squeeze the trigger and heard a shot over my shoulder.
Exactly. And now is there one thing I haven't done, and I wish I would have, is down in Dealey. Is there a lot of echo that goes off of those buildings? Could it have been possible that maybe one of the shots sounded like two? Or on the flip side of that, could more shots have gone off that maybe weren't heard because the other shots were going off?
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you're getting onto it. All right. First about the echoes. I was in Dealey Plaza before they built Reunion Tower and before they put up some of the more newer buildings and stuff. And I was in Dealey Plaza afterwards. I was there in the summer of 1980, I believe it was, when the House Select Committee on Assassinations was down there test firing Mannlicher Carcanos, all right, from the 6th floor of the Scuba Depository using live ammunition, okay? They were doing this for the acoustical studies. They came up with the Dallas Police dictabelt, which somebody had keyed open the microphone 3 minutes before the shooting started and held it open for 8 minutes after the shooting, which prevented anyone from the authorities from immediately reacting. It's like anybody knows CB radios knows that if you're trying to talk on your CB radio and I'm close to you and I have a more powerful CB radio, then I'm stepping on you, right? And you can't broadcast because mine's the more powerful one. Well, it's the same type thing. It keyed open the microphone. It was there in the plaza somewhere, and it stopped the communications. But then some years later, they figured, well, wait a minute. If the thing was open, mic was open, then maybe we get recordings of the gunfire. So they had the House Select Committee got some scientists, some acoustical scientists, to study this dictabelt, and they said that there were sounds on there that as many as 9 or 10 that they could not rule out as being gunshots. So what they did was they went to Dallas and they set up microphones going all the way down Houston Street and then down Elm Street, and then they test fired from the 6th floor of the School Book Depository and from behind the wooden picket fence on the grassy knoll. And the scientists then matched up the sound patterns and said with a 96, 98% probability, which is a certainty in scientific terms, that there was at least one shot from the grassy knoll. Well, the House Committee, they didn't really want to hear that, so they went and got a separate group of acoustical scientists, and they came up and said the same thing. Said there was as many as 9 or 10 shots that they could not rule out as being gunshots. So now I think what we're seeing here is that instead of 3 shots being fired, there were 3 volleys, okay? And these guys, the shooters, were all connected by radio. And so you've got a situation where they're all laying in wait at their various locations, and they're connected by radio. Somebody's watching the movement of the motorcade, and then that's another thing. If it was just one shooter from the 6th floor of the book depository, your shot would be when Kennedy was coming north on Houston Street, coming right at you, creating a stationary target coming right at you. That's your shot. But we're told, no, he waited until it turned in front of the building and then went downhill laterally away from him with a tree and intervening in the line of sight, before he took his shots. That doesn't make any sense at all. But it does make sense if they had to put him in a triangulated fire ambush there in Dealey Plaza. So then you consider if there's 3 volleys and you got 3 shooters and they're shooting 3, that's 9 shots. And once you study it closely, you can just about account for all of those 9 shots. You've got one that hit Kennedy in the back. You got one that hit him in the throat from the front. And then you've got 2 that hit him on the right-hand side of the head almost simultaneously because his head begins to move forward very violently, but then immediately it snaps backwards and he falls to the left and the rear. So he got hit twice in the head, once from behind, once from the front. So there's 4 shots. Then you got 2 shots hit Connelly. There's 6. You got 1 that hit the highway sign. There's 7. You got 1 that hit the street. There's 8. And then you got the one that went way over the car, hit down on Main Street, threw up some concrete or bits of metal and nicked the cheek of James Tague, a bystander. There they all are. They're all accounted for.
So what's the bottom line then? There's one other thing that you didn't mention, and I think it really stands on its own, is the photographs that show everybody spinning around and looking back at the white picket fence. And
and that's where
nobody,
they all rushed to,
no, exactly, and nobody, except for the people that ducked and laid down on the ground. Everybody ran back towards the grassy knoll underneath that tree where the white picket fence was. That's the first thing. Second, I don't remember anybody looking up at the book depository. And I don't know if it was because of the acoustics.
In fact, there were witnesses in the depository who heard the shots, but then ran to the west to look out towards the grassy knoll.
That's right. And what's her name down on the, she was on the 4th floor, the angled towards, I forget her name. But she looked out the window. She didn't hear anything come from above her either. And I think she took some pictures, actually. I think she had a camera. But anyway.
I think you're talking about Elsie Dorman.
Yes. But again, to me, everybody looking and spinning around and looking towards that white picket fence, and it looks like you can see somebody standing there. You see some shadowy figure under there that disappeared and ran back towards the back of the depository building. I think he turned right up the street, whatever that was. But that to me it speaks volumes, and I just don't understand why, that isn't just up front and discussed. I don't get it.
Well, it's because we're back to Hitler and the big lie.
Right.
You tell the big lie, it's like this. If this was any other case, and I told you that in this other case, we've got a guy shooting from that the majority of witnesses in that area said that a shot came from behind the fence, and we have a photograph of a guy firing a weapon from behind the fence, and we've got acoustical scientific studies that said a shot came from behind the fence. If I tried to tell you there's nobody behind that fence, you'd call me an idiot. Okay? But this is the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
Why, that didn't happen.
Right. And do you think with Connelly's reaction in the front seat, and I hate to say this because, he's appears to be a very nice guy. I've always liked him. But his reaction to me was a little numbing. Do you think he was waiting for those shots to be fired? I'm just saying.
Well, here's an interesting, since you bring that up. First, you have to understand that Connelly had been campaign manager for Lyndon Johnson.
That's right.
He was Lyndon Johnson's protege, okay? And then Ralph Yarborough was the other senator from Texas, and was considered quite liberal at the time. And you see, at that time, there were no Republicans in Texas. It was just conservative Democrats, most of whom later changed to become Republicans. And then you had the liberal Democrats, a small but vocal minority, led by Ralph Yarborough, Senator Yarborough. Senator Yarborough was riding in the car with Lyndon Johnson. He told me that when I interviewed him about how at Love Field that Johnson was trying to get Ralph Yarborough to ride in the car with Kennedy. And Kennedy was going, no, wait a minute. Connelly, you're the governor. I think you need to be riding in the car. No. We need to get Ralph Yarborough in there, give him a chance to sit by the president, blah, blah, blah. And they had almost like a little argument and said finally it was Kennedy put his foot down at Love Field and said, Connelly, you're the governor. Get in the damn car, okay? So then once you understand that Connelly didn't want to get in the car and that they were trying to put Johnson's enemy in the car, then it really brings some new import to the famous words of John Connelly when bullets started coming into the car. He didn't scream out and say, my God, I've been shot. He didn't scream out and say, somebody's shooting at us. He said, and this is well documented, my God, they're going to kill us all.
Exactly. It was a numbing response. It really, and like I said, the list of suspects, this just adds another, flavor to this entire thing. Now, and there's one other aspect, and I was talking with some friends about this the other night, knowing that you were coming on the show, and it just seems like JFK was the subject for the week around here, but is this, and I don't talk about JFK, and this is the first time we've ever discussed it on the show, so my feelings on this are new to everybody, but I'll just say this. In his famous speech that he made about, without naming names, but about the New World Order and secret societies making decisions for everybody, and that, he was here to change things. That just adds everything. That's a whole nother category and list of people that are not happy with this guy.
That's right.
And what do you think about that angle too as well?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I say. See, they've kept the researchers off balance for years, arguing with each other over, well, did the mafia do it? Did the CIA do it? Was it the military? Was it the Russians? Well, was it the KGB? And the thing is, the answer is basically, forget the foreign thing. If this had been a Russian plot or a Chinese plot or a Japanese plot or whatever, then, the apparatus of the federal government of the United States would have swung into action, and we'd know about that. Even if it was just rumor, okay, we would know that. No, It comes down to, was it the CIA? Was it the anti-Castro Cubans? Was it the mafia? Was it the military? Was it the FBI? And the answer is yes.
Exactly.
All of the above. And I can tell you where that was centered. That was centered in the secret war against Castro, okay, under Operation Mongoose, which was being run off of the University of Miami campus at the Jimwave station. This was a CIA operation, but it also involved the FBI and it involved the anti-Castro Cubans, and it involved the mafia. And there they all are. And they were working up all kinds of skullduggery against Cuba, including assassination plots against Fidel Castro. And basically what happened was they finally, Kennedy was trying to put a stop to that. The honest FBI guys were raiding their training camps, and they were trying to shut them down. And so the Mongoose people decided that their real enemy was in the White House, not in Havana. So they just simply sent some of those hit teams to Dallas and then covered it all up.
Not to be cavalier about this, but it must have been really fun to be in politics and the CIA back then, because they had stuff going on all over the place.
Yeah, like the guy that was running the cat house out in San Francisco, I think it was. He said he was just having a ball, drugs, rock and roll, sex, all under the aegis of the CIA, you know, getting paid for it. What a deal.
Okay, let's change gears before we do run out of time. We've got so many things that I want to get in tonight. So first off, what do you think? Let's go over to jimmychurchradio.com and tell me what you think, although we've had a couple of conversations about this. But what do you think about this discovery that we've pulled off here with this deep underwater base off of the coast of Malibu? What do you think about these photographs?
Oh, well, you know, I was pretty much unaware of that, but I'm not surprised by it because there is underwater stuff all over the place. There is columns and stairways off the coast of Bimini in the Caribbean that a lot of people think might be the lost continent of Atlantis, off Okinawa by Japan. They've got underwater stuff, and so and then I sent you a picture, which is on your website, of these pyramids that are underwater near Cuba, and that's interesting because that's another thing. Most people, you mention pyramids, and most people think about the pyramids in Egypt.
Right.
And then if they're really well educated and well versed, they might say, well, and then there were pyramids, you know, that the Aztecs used there in Mexico, and the Mayans and on like that. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's a giant pyramid in Eastern Europe. There's pyramids in China, which they've tried to disguise by covering them over with dirt and planting trees on them.
Mm-hmm.
But they're there, and they were photographed as far back as World War II by pilots flying over there. So we got giant pyramids in Eastern Europe and in Egypt and in Central America and Mexico and South America with the Incas. And now we find out they're in China. And now we've got pyramids on some of these sunken cities around the world. This gets into my latest book, Our Occulted History, which deals with all of the evidence around the world that shows that there was a highly technologically advanced civilization on this planet long before our recorded history. And, of course, we all know the legends of Atlantis, and there's been a lot of controversy about that. Some people say that it was a big island in the middle of the Atlantic. Others say it was Antarctica before a axis tilt and it got covered with ice. And others say, no, it was the island of Santorini in the Mediterranean. And others say, no, it was in the South China Sea.
Right.
And so, you know, and again, I think they're all right, okay? Because what it is there was this worldwide civilization, and I think the pyramids were their power transmitters because there was a British scientist, Christopher Dunn, who makes a very, very compelling argument that the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau was actually an energy generator. It was designed to draw energy from the earth and then transmit it. And I tend to buy that because when I was in Egypt, you go to the palaces and you go to the tombs, and every square foot is filled with Egyptian hieroglyphics. But you go in the Great Pyramid, there's not any.
Right.
It wasn't a tomb, and it wasn't a temple. It was something else, and it was a power generator, is what it was.
Well, the more that I look, and the more that I learn about Giza, and specifically the Sphinx and those pyramids, the more that I know, the thought of virtually cavemen, in 3000 BC, building those. They were already there when Egypt rose as an empire. And
absolutely.
Yeah, there's
and
just no question about it.
Got me even before I was college educated and really had started studying all this. I kind of figured that out back in Baptist Sunday school because we were told that it was the slaves of the Egyptians that dragged all those heavy stones on rollers and then pile them up to make those great pyramids, you know. Well, who were the slaves of the Egyptians? The Hebrews, okay? And what is one of the most well-documented peoples in the world? The Hebrews. And yet in all their writing, all of the Old Testament, all of the Torah, all of the Jewish writings, is there anywhere where it says, oh, by the way, Cousin Herbie dragged stones through the desert
Nope.
his whole life building the pyramids?
That's right.
It's not there. They
Nope.
didn't do it. Well, if the slaves of the Egyptians didn't do it, then who did it?
They were already there for thousands and thousands of years, and I think
and the proof of this, and I saw this for myself, is on the Great Pyramid, and certainly obviously visible on the Sphinx, is these deep vertical erosions, all right, cut into that rock and into that dirt, which indicate, and geologists agree, that means that both the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid had set out for many, many years under very heavy rains, okay? And yet the scientists and the climatologists will tell you that there has not been any significant rainfall on the Giza Plateau for more than 10,500 years, which means the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid were built more than 10,500 years ago, which is about 5,000 years before the Egyptians showed up.
You bring up a great point, and it's this. When we go back to the Ice Age, and for the researchers out there that are listening to me right now, listening to this show, I need you to grasp this thought and put this on your frontal lobe and listen to Jimmy for a second. During the last Ice Age, which, by the way, anybody that claims to know anything about climate, they don't know what starts and what ends an ice age. So we're confused about that. But let's go back to the last ice age. Let's go back 12,000 years ago, 13,000 years ago. In Canada, over North America, that ice went all the way down through central Indiana. You can draw the line across the United States. That's a long ways south. But when you go up to Canada, that ice was 2 miles thick. 2 miles all the way across the continent. Now, the Earth's crust is soft. So if you have the weight of 2 mile thick ice across the continent crushing the North America like that, something else on the Earth has got to give. It's like when you squeeze a balloon. Squeeze it on one side, it expands on the other. Something raises, something lowers. And so with the weight of that ice on North America out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, that's rising up. That's rising up out in the Pacific too as well. There's that give and take that's going on with the weight of that. So that means, I'm going back to your point about Atlantis. It could have been anywhere, and it could have been everywhere at the same time. You know, the Azores Islands and all of that, if that was raised up just a little bit, suddenly you have a huge, virtually a continent sitting right out there. And as the ice receded and melted and that pressure went away here, then something went back underneath the ocean. You know, it's like a teeter-totter. You know, it's this give and take that goes on. And when did that happen? That happened 12,000 years ago. And 12,000 years ago, with all of that ice up there, that means the coastline and the oceans were 400 miles or 400 feet bigger. And so if you're taking 400 feet off of the ocean levels, any civilization could have been cities all over the place that are covered with water now. Hence, this Malibu discovery that we've just found. You know, what was that 11,000 years ago? What was it? Was it shoreline? And you know, it for anybody to say, and it kills me, for anybody to say that modern man started in Samaria 3,000 years ago with the advent of the wheel has no clue as what they are trying to say. You know, and we have these huge gaps of civilization. I'm so glad for researchers like you that are willing, you know, to step off the paper a little bit, to step off and look at things a little bit more pragmatically and a little more logically.
Well, Jimmy, the problem is that our education system has gotten to the point to where it is so specialized. If you're a geologist, you know about geology, but that's it. If you're a biologist, you know biology, but that's it. And we've kind of lost the presence of philosophers or somebody who knows a little bit about a lot of things and can connect all the dots.
Right.
And that's why we have like this the controversy over the age of the pyramids. The geologists look at it and say, well, it's got to be more than 12,500 years old. And but the Egyptologists, who have their whole careers and all their books and everything else vested in the story about, the story that we get, the high school version of Egyptian history, and they fight and scream and holler and go, oh, no, that can't be right, blah, blah, blah. So they got everybody fighting with each other, and everybody is so concentrating on their particular tree that very few people can see the forest.
Is it frustrating for you?
Of course it is. Yeah, sure.
Let's go to these pictures while we're on this subject. Let's go to these pictures that you sent us. Everybody go over to jimmychurchradio.com right now. Head down to the guest gallery. You know where it's at. Scroll down, and Jim sent us, he sent us a bunch of images. The producer.
Things I like to look at.
The producers picked out these 12, Jim, and I hope you're happy with their selection. But
sure.
One of the things that you brought up is picture number in the bottom row. It's these pyramids off of Cuba. Mm-hmm. And now my comments are about, I have a couple. First off, when this revelation hit a few years ago, it seemed to die out and fizzle. And I don't understand why. This is some of the most extraordinary.
It's called control over the media.
Why? Oh, first off, this is off the western tip of Cuba, if I'm correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are we looking at here in this photograph?
Well, you can see everybody can see it just as well as I can. It just looks like there's 3 pyramids with some other structures that obviously at some point there was some kind of community there, people living there. That's about all I can tell you at this point.
It looks like a city. It looks like a city to me. It looks like roads and corridors and buildings. And
I remember when there was some mainstream media coverage of this just a little bit. They said they'd found these columns and pyramids and things, and that they were speculating that it might be sunken Atlantis and that they were going to send more expeditions, blah, blah. And you never heard any more about it. It just kind of went dark. Now, the picture to the right of that, where you can see the monolithic columns standing there with the cross pieces, that is the Osirian. And this one really fascinates me, too, because if you look at the very top of the photograph, you can barely see it, but there's a structure up there, the light stone structure. That is the temple at Abydos. And one of the palaces of one of the Egyptian pharaohs. So this is something that predated that because it's under it.
Right.
Down there under it, and we had to bribe people to go back there. They don't want you going back there. In fact, usually it's underwater. The 2 dark streaks that you see there are actually filled with water. And usually this whole thing is underwater. We just happened to get there at a very unusually dry season, and the thing was open, and they had that little stairway you could walk down in there, and we bribed some guards and walked down there and walked all around, and then finally when the head guard or who it was who we had not bribed came along with his AK-47 and made us get out of there. But look at that, and it looks like a well-made Stonehenge.
It does.
And again, here is this huge edifice there, built by who knows who or who knows how. How do you get giant stones like that in place? And you can see how perfectly cut they are, and yet we don't even know who did that. It was not the Egyptians. It was there before the Egyptians, and there's no hieroglyphics on it. It's amazing. And then over to the extreme left, as you're looking at it, you see this story. You can click on the Easter Island picture, And this one really got me because I was, like everybody else, I was well aware of the giant heads there on Easter Island, which is out in the Pacific. And it's always been an amazing thing of how these islanders, with little or no technology, were able to carve out these giant statues and place them up there on Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, as it's actually called. And so I wanted to put this picture up here to show that those heads, that's just the heads. There's bodies under there, huge bodies. And here they've dug down, and you can see the body under the giant head. Now, here's the clincher. You would think people would go, oh, my God, look at this. How did they get these? We couldn't even figure out how they got those heads there, and now we found out there's giant bodies under there. How'd they do that? And you'd think that there'd be a big hoorah about this. But the truth is, they covered them up. They filled it in. They covered them up again so that you can only see the heads, and even that's a big mystery. It's just there's so much things going on in the world that people just don't know about. It's we live on a very incredible planet.
The fascination that I have when it's one megalithic, location after another around the world. And the more that you look at it, the more questions that are there. Back in the day, and I'm just talking 20 years ago before the internet, okay? So 20, 30, 40 years ago, and then the rest of history, you only knew what you were told by your teacher, and you only knew what was in a book in the library. What you didn't have access to was all of the information around the world and able to go and answer your own questions and just go and investigate. Well, we have that today. And for myself, for you, for the people that, read your stuff and listen to you lecture and people like you, you can go to Robert Schoch and John Anthony West and all of these guys. But is that now we are able to just look at each other and go, how did they do this? We know we can't do this today. How did somebody do this with chicken bones 5,000 years ago? And we all know it couldn't have been done. We have to figure out how it was done, but the orthodoxy out there, the explanations too. I had somebody send me a letter the other day. I'm a geologist. I'm an I'm this. I'm that. I'm this. I'm educated. I've been to this school and this school and this school, and everything that you spew is just pure rubbish. Can't you give credit to primitive man and just let it go? And I'm like, no, I can't. What are you asking me to do? You want me, a guy that is wearing bear skin, right, with a club in his hand, is going
deer antlers
with deer antlers, and is building Baalbek. No, I'm not buying into it. I just can't do it.
It makes sense.
I look at it the other way too. You're asking everybody else to believe that, and you know what? We're just smarter than that. Truly smarter.
Well, tell them about Gornaya Shoria. Is that how you pronounce it in Russia?
Yes.
Siberia?
Yes.
See, a lot of that was kind of a new one on me. I had not heard of this place, but they've got gigantic cut obelisks and stones and stuff that are just as big, perhaps bigger, than those huge blocks at over in Lebanon.
Yeah, Baalbek. Yes.
And, where did they come from? And who was able to, we couldn't lift those. I don't think we could lift those today. I know when I was researching for my book, Our Occulted History, I looked at those stones at Baalbek, and, the contrary view is, oh, well, we have giant cranes today that could lift those blocks. So I did some research, and I found out that, sure enough, and I believe in England and maybe one other place in Europe, and there were two places in the world that claimed to have giant cranes that possibly could lift one of those stones, okay? But here's the clincher, Jimmy. Neither one of them could move.
Yeah, right.
Move with them, okay? So the idea that they were able to lift these stones up and place them up on each other and move it from the quarry, which is miles away, and then place them in situ where they are, It's just, sorry, it doesn't work. We can't do that.
I ask everybody, all the guests that come on, to send me the one UFO pic that trips you out the most, the one. And I'm guessing, but the one that you sent is number 4 in the top row, right? All the way over on the right?
Yeah.
On the moon?
Yeah, that is a shot that's been verified that was taken by Apollo 16, and you can see the surface of the moon. You can see this flying saucer coming around it, you know. Hello, what the heck? You know, now, I'm one of these that I've never been overly impressed with lights in the sky, you know, and because you see a light in the sky. I've seen some weird lights in the sky and things that I can't quite explain, but I would never try to tell somebody that it's a UFO. I don't know what it is.
Right.
Okay, but now this photograph, that's something there. That's not a spot of light. That's an object.
This reminds me of, and you and I were talking about this earlier today. I hadn't seen this pic yet. Of course, I'm familiar with it, but when we were talking about it today, you immediately, when I brought up Leslie Kean and her choice of pictures, which was the Costa Rica shot of them, of the plane mapping the terrain, and they go back, and then here's this flying, clearly a flying disc caught by the mapping terrain photography. And you said, well, what about the Apollo 16 shot? And you're exactly right. This is like the lunar version of Leslie Kean's choice of photographs, in that you look at this, there's your classic flying saucer. This looks like any 1950s film, you know, flying saucer. And in that, but the difference is it's an official NASA shot. Right. that just like Leslie Kean's, it's the classic, you know, 1950s flying saucer, but it's an official government photograph. It's not, you know, from somebody else, and it's not obviously photoshopped, and it's not a flying hubcap. This is Apollo 16 taking this shot, and I find this absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Now, you got to understand that the Apollo astronauts were first and foremost military officers. They were military men, and as such, they were subject to martial law and to the Code of Military Conduct. And if they were told not to talk about something, that was their orders. And if they violated those orders and talked about something they weren't supposed to, they could be sent to Leavenworth for the rest of their life. So it really intrigues me where if you'll go to the second row to the far left, you'll see a picture of a NASA spacesuit that's being, that was a presentation at the Roswell Museum. And he's standing there by a Roswell city limit sign. And Buzz Aldrin, it was on the moon, says, "Come see our visitors." Buzz Aldrin. It's like, you know, he was asked for his autograph, and he gave it, but why would he say that? Is he trying to tell us something? Is he trying to tell us something that there was, aliens that landed in Roswell?
He's going to be on the show here shortly, and I have been warned, but and so many people have confronted him with these questions.
Right.
And he's always...
Keep in mind, I'm sure he's an honest, honorable guy, but he's under military orders. He can't talk about it.
He's probably still getting a paycheck, right? He's got a pension.
A retirement, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I so want to go there. I really do. And then there's the respectful side of me. You know, he's older than me.
Well, okay, look, if you're respectful, I think that you can be okay. I had the experience of sitting, having a few drinks with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. And I was there with some other people, and I was just biting my lip. I so wanted to ask him about, you know, aliens and UFOs, but I felt the same way you did, Jimmy. I didn't want to just get in his face, and I didn't want to, you know, maybe anger him or anything else. I was trying to give him all the proper respect that an astronaut deserves. But so it wasn't me, but somebody else in the group broached the subject, and the next thing you know, he's just opening up and says, yes, we've gotten technology from alien technology and blah, blah, blah. And we're talking around, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there, and it's like, the old light bulb goes on over your head. I'm going, holy cow. I'm sitting here talking with the sixth man to walk on the moon, and he's talking as calmly and rationally about aliens, as if we were sitting here talking about the weather. I'm going, wow.
With your experience in the Army Intelligence Unit and in Vietnam, and Clifford Stone, and I'm sure you guys are friends, but with everything that he has presented, when you were in Army Intelligence, and I don't know if you've ever discussed this before, but I'll ask you directly, was there any scuttlebutt going around? Was there anything that was spoken about that went on over in Vietnam?
Now, first you have to understand, I personally did not go to Vietnam. I was in the Army during Vietnam.
Okay.
So this is not my first-hand knowledge, but what I do have secondhand is from people who came back from Vietnam, and I remember talking with one guy who was an air traffic controller there, and he went over there, and I think he was based at Da Nang, and at the airfield there, and he said he was laughing and saying that, his first day on the job, he got there, and he's watching the radar scope or whatever, and these blips come on there, and they flit around, and they go off, and he's going, what the hell is that? And everybody said, oh, don't worry about it. That's UFOs. They come, they go. Don't worry about it. That's just, a daily occurrence or something. And he said they were just that blasé about it.
So it was so common that they just ignored?
Yeah, they just said, yeah, it's, and I don't know. I don't know.
Wow.
It's just there. But, of course, that goes all the way back. There are, I think I told you this off air when we were talking, but I can't say with any certainty that I've ever even seen a UFO. I've seen some strange things happening in the sky and some lights and stuff, but I wouldn't dare try to tell somebody that it was a UFO because I don't know. But what I do know is in my 50-year career, as a journalist, I have come into contact with so many pilots, both commercial and military, air traffic controllers, FAA people, military officers, police officers, who have told me some of the wildest stories that you've ever heard. And after a while, you just have to say, wait a minute, all of these people can't be crazy, There's something going on here. So there's no question in my mind. I don't believe in UFOs. I know they're here, and I know they're there. Now, let me quickly give this caveat. I think we have some still relatively secret technology that we're using. Some of these triangles, the huge triangles that they see around, I think this is some anti-gravity stuff that we're building and we're using. And, keep in mind the U-2 was flying for years before they admitted to its existence. Right now, we've got this the new Aurora, which they still have not officially acknowledged, but Jane's Aircraft and other people know what they're talking about. I say, yeah, it's there. And we've got all of this stuff happening. But see, let me tell you, and this kind of segues into something else we wanted to talk about, which is 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
If you have secret technology that is not known to the general public, then just think about it. You can pull off something and and give out any cover story you want to, and nobody can really adequately rebut you because they don't know the technology.
Right.
Okay. For example, on 9/11, when that happened, and I was as shocked as anybody else. Get up, turn on TV, and I was there watching it when the second plane hit, and like everybody else, I just went, holy crap, we're under attack. And this is an attack. This is not some accident. And but then at the same time, I started really paying attention. And right away, they acknowledged that supposedly there were these 4 airliners that are hijacked by 4 separate hijack crews coming out of 4 separate airports at different times, and and yet their transponders went off. It's about the same time. And I'm going, wait a minute, how's that possible? That's not possible. It's only possible under one circumstance, and that is computer capture of their onboard computers. And I knew this at the time that was possible because in the late 80s, I'd been interviewing an airline pilot, and he offhandedly mentioned, he says, you know, my job's redundant. And I says, whoa, what are you talking about? He said, well, these wide-bodied Boeing jets, 737, 757, 767, they have these onboard computers. They fly by wire. The computer flies the airplane. He said, I'm just there in case the computer breaks down, you know? And so once I understood that, then you also understand that just like the CB radio can be stepped on and you can overpower it with a stronger signal, you can actually overpower those onboard computers and capture them remotely and then remotely fly the aircraft. In fact, the head of British aviation in early 2001 had made the statement that air hijacking was a thing of the past. He said, because now we can electronically gain control over the onboard computer and we can fly the aircraft to a safe landing regardless of what the hijackers or the crew want. So I knew this at the time and tried to tell people, wait a minute, you know, this could be an inside job because there's no way that you can take Hani Hanjour, who was not even capable of flying a Cessna,
right,
and tell me that he can take the controls of a 757 and then fly hundreds of miles and then unerringly make a spiraling dive and right into the side of the Pentagon.
Right.
It just isn't going to happen. Can't happen.
Right, right.
So the only thing, but then of course I was just the conspiracy theorist, and yet now today, you know, you go watch a movie and you'll see ads for the Air Force, and they say, hey, you know, sit at this computer console and fly those drones over Afghanistan, and you can rocket and bomb people over there, and all the time while you're sitting there at Fort Huachuca, you know. I mean, now everybody knows that we have that capability, but we didn't know that on 9/11.
There's, you can't help but make, and some tweets just came in and an email all at the same time. You can't help now, today, the 21st of May, make the comparisons to 9/11 and MH370. It's glaring to me. And I'm going to back up. I want to comment on something that you just said. During all of the talking head stuff on MH370 on CNN and other networks, I actually had heard a couple of so-called specialists and pilots and so forth say that you cannot overtake a Boeing 777. You cannot do it. You cannot fly it remotely like a drone. But yet I have heard just what you had just said many times, that technology has been there for years. And autopilot is autopilot. And the communication between, you know, ground control and or satellite and the aircraft, that type of remote control to me seems only the simplest of things. It's not some technical marvel that we're trying to overcome. We've been doing it for decades with, you know, look, radio-controlled planes. I'm a modeler. I have radio-controlled cars on the floor. What's the difference between a radio-controlled plane and a 777 that's up there? And the answer is none.
Size.
Yeah, right. So now, and now with 9/11, the one aspect of it that I find questionable is this. As an amateur pilot, those guys they didn't have a couple of chances. There was fly one time into those buildings or not. That's it. They didn't didn't, you know what I mean?
You can't have a flyby and then come back on it.
Exactly. Oh, I missed it. Hold on. I'm going to swing it on around. And the same thing goes. It's even more astonishing with the Pentagon to pull that one off, unless it was remotely controlled somehow and you know, computer
driven. Did you say
driven.
you're a pilot?
No, me? Oh, no. We're
well, okay. Even if you're not a pilot, though, you can appreciate what I'm saying here when I say that if you took the controls of a modern Boeing 757 and you managed to hijack it and you managed to get in the driver's seat, how do you know where to go? How are you going to pinpoint one building in the middle of Manhattan? Come on.
It's impossible.
Even experienced pilots would have a problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. And you brought up another point too that needs to be touched upon. It's sort of discussed, but it's not out front. You're hundreds of miles away, and unless you know where you're going and you're super experienced, because you only got one crack at it, and how big is I have Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've got a few different versions of it. I've got the Pacific Theater. I've got World War II in Europe, and then I've got the normal flight. And when you are flying on those things, you are. It's a needle in a haystack kind of situation.
Oh yeah,
And I was flying up in, and this is my experience. I was flying up in Canada and on a private plane, and we're going from Saskatoon up to Regina. And for my Canadian friends out there that are listening, you know exactly where I'm talking about, which is remote tundra. Okay, this is a couple of miles from Santa's Village. Okay, this is way up there. But when you're flying across this tundra, and we're on a plane that doesn't have, it's not guided by radar. And I even asked the pilot, his name was Trevor, and I asked the pilot, I'm sitting in the co-pilot seat right in the front of this twin-engine plane. And I go, how are we doing this? And he goes, well, we're just heading that way. And that was it. We're just, by compass, and we're flying towards Regina. And as we approach Regina, off in the distance, it's a little black dot. But the amazing thing to me is how he flew and landed on the runway. But it was one path. You got one shot at that runway. And when you're flying across that kind of distance, you can't make a mistake. And I'm sorry, all of those amateur pilots that were on each one of those airlines, I'm sorry. They would not have done a 1-for-1.
Couldn't do it.
No,
just couldn't do it.
A blue medal, a blue ribbon, so to speak. No, it would not have happened. I just wouldn't have bought it.
Well, Jimmy, here's what I like to point to when it gets to the attacks of 9/11 is that, again, we've got cover up by obfuscation. You got one expert says one thing, another expert that counters that, another expert that argues that, and everybody's got a theory, and blah, 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 and the whole thing gets lost in the shuffle. So what I like to do is on anyone who is ready and willing to open their mind and their eyes and their ears and consider what might have really happened on 9/11, I would point to the words of John Farmer. Oops, now wait a minute. Who's John Farmer? Well, he's a former attorney general in New Jersey, okay? But he served as senior counsel to the official 9/11 Commission, the one body that was actually officially designated to investigate 9/11 and report what happened to the public. And we all heard the news media tell us what they said and blah, blah, blah. But let me quote to him from his book, The Ground Truth, which was published in 2009. Right at the very front in the introduction, on page 2, he says, and I quote, "In the course of our investigation into the national response to the attacks, the 9/11 Commission staff discovered that the official version of what had occurred that morning, that is, what government military officials had told the Congress, the Commission, the media, and the public about who knew what and when, was almost entirely and inexplicably untrue."
Bingo.
Untrue. Hello?
Yes.
And just to make sure that it wasn't, that wasn't a typo or something, over on page 4, he says, at some level of the government, at some point in time, there was a decision not to tell the truth about what happened. Hello? Now, that's not a conspiracy theorist, and that's not somebody trying to sell a book. That's the official senior counsel of the official 9/11 Commission. Now, if he says they didn't tell us the truth, then I ask, what is the problem and what is unpatriotic about trying to find out what the truth is?
What is? Somebody tell me. I'd like to know.
I would too.
You've lit a
Of course,
fire.
I've been screaming this since the day it happened, and then, but I'm just a conspiracy theorist.
I was just about to say you've lit a few fires, and I want to touch upon a couple of questions here. That also this email that just came in, and I want to read this to you. It's pretty good. It says, on the angle of, quote, giving credit to primitive man, end quote, I'm disgusted with this argument. It's an insult on modern intelligence, and to me seems to be another way for the power structure to implement their ideology. If primitive man was so advanced, then that means we are living in an upside-down world because clearly we are the primitive ones. Have you turned on television lately? Oh, man.
That's a good point, and it's really true.
Yes, it is.
I think instead of evolution, we are the product of devolution. Okay?
Yeah, this comes in from
and actually,
Andy.
that could be proven because, oddly enough, the earliest dynasties of the Egyptian empire were the best. They had the best art and the most science and the most, and in other words, the Egyptians, instead of starting as primitives and building up to an advanced civilization, they started off as an advanced civilization and then degraded down all the way down to where, like, some of the lesser little small pyramids, that was probably actually were built during the Pharaoh's times, and they were trying to imitate the Great Pyramids. They just couldn't do it, and of course those are all slumping over and falling over, and they
didn't quite get it done, did they?
They didn't quite get it.
And you're absolutely right. They started at the top. What appears to be, when you look at Luxor and you look at some of those other temples that were built and the hieroglyphics and the artwork and the detail and everything, it's absolutely incredible. And then the Romans came in, the Greeks came in, and we ended up with Cleopatra at the end. That were just, all of the later part of, and I'm not taking anything away from the Egyptians at all, but by the time
they had a fantastic civilization, they just weren't the first.
No, they weren't, and in the end, like I said, right around year zero, and Cleopatra and the Romans and the Greeks and everything that had come in to play, they had forgotten about everything that made Egypt special. The pharaohs,
right.
That was 3,000 years before that, 2,500 years before that. They degraded.
I mean, we don't even know for sure what was going on 200 years ago, much less 2,000.
Well, and I wanted to say, Andy in this email ends it with this. He said, "Just turn on the Kardashians." Oh, that's brilliant stuff. Okay, so let me get to oh, hold on. The emails are just flying in. And by the way, you want to take a couple phone calls?
Sure, I'll do that. But first, be sure and put in a plug for Contact in the Desert.
Oh, I did already. And we are going to.
I noticed, I think you have a poster for that there on your website. But, folks, if you're anywhere in Southern California and near Joshua Tree, this thing is shaping up to be quite an event. So, I'm going to be there and a whole raft of other people. And if you want your questions answered, or if you want to learn new questions, that would be the place to be.
The list for Contact in the Desert, it's one thing to go here and go there and see something, okay, and you get one choice guy, but this is like Woodstock in 1969, man. that is the A list, and we're doing a contest, and for everybody out there, you can participate. Just go over to jimmychurchradio.com. You'll see the poster that Jim was just referring to, and it says right there, win a pass to Contact in the Desert. That's a 4-day pass, man. That's a $400 pass for 4 days. And when you look, I mean, what is it like for you to hang out with, Tsoukalos and Van Doniken and Greer and Wilcock and Nick Pope and John Anthony West, all of you guys hanging out, Richard Dolan? Do you guys go to a secret room and hang out by yourselves and go, hey, man, this is pretty cool?
Unfortunately, it's usually so hectic that, it's almost ships passing in the night. But you do get to come into contact with all of this stuff, and the energy and the shared knowledge is pretty incredible.
Well, I had told you last week or the week before that, we're going to broadcast live on that Friday, and I hope that you are there Friday so you can come up and, say a few words on the air that Friday night. I'm
pretty sure, yeah, I think I'm scheduled to be on a panel that afternoon or something like that, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be there.
Oh, it's going to be great. And,
I'll come look you up.
Yeah, we'll go knock one back somewhere, too. So now, back to these
the
points.
Future.
Yeah, well, yeah. You've lit a fire here on Twitter. So let me bang through a few of these tweets, and they're all about 9/11 and MH370. Right. And he says
Which, by the way, the computer capture can answer the question about 370. Okay. And so where did it go? It went to Diego Garcia.
You think so? That's what I think. Yeah. I really do. It's either that or it was hijacked, and quite simply, an F-16 shot it down. And that's the other thing.
Again, I always try to go back to the basic either or whatever. Okay, if you'll think back, Jimmy, to the Cold War, when we were locked in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, we were told that with our new satellites and infrared and unlike that, heat-seeking things, all kinds of stuff, that if they tried to launch a missile from the Ural Mountains, we'd know about it, and we could track it, right?
No question.
All the way back 20 years ago, they had that capability, and today now they tell us that, well, we don't know what happened to that airplane. Come on.
Exactly.
Somebody knows, and somebody in the U.S. government knows because they filed a Freedom of Information Act suit with the National Security Agency wanting their information, and I've seen a copy of the letter, and it said, no, because we're not going to give you anything because it is correctly classified. What?
Yes.
If it was just an airplane that had an accident and crashed in the ocean, why would it be classified?
Why it's a big deal.
Something's going on there, and we're not being told about
That's right. And this is, I'm sorry, after 9/11, the one thing that all of us citizenry, us status quo around the world, the one thing that we were comforted in is that BS was never going to happen again because of all of the technology and all of the awareness and everything else that would not happen again. Putting steel doors on the pilot's cabin and GPS and satellites and everything, it would never happen again. And so I can swallow a few things about 370, but the one thing that I don't believe is that they don't know where that plane is. That's the part. That's the
key part.
That's the key part. Going between Australia and Diego Garcia with all of the advanced radar systems, not only there, but India and Pakistan and all those other coastlines and Vietnam. I'm sorry. There's all of that military radar that is there on both sides, on the left and on the right, on the east and the west. That's it. They know. And if you take all of that away, there's the satellite telemetry. And if you take all of that away, Jim, there's one thing, and I talk about it on the show all the time, and I know it's going to get me in trouble eventually. But when you're an airline and you lease a 777 from Boeing, you get one little convenient package on the contract, which is you get a service contract from Rolls-Royce in England for those engines. And when that plane starts, the telemetry goes back to Coventry, England, goes back to Rolls-Royce.
That's right.
And what do you get? You get a full-time concierge. You got a guy back there monitoring every aspect of the engines because it's part of the service contract. And they
had similar thing with Flight 77, which is the one they said was barreled into the Pentagon. And years later, they finally got hold of that data. And guess what? According to the data in the flight recorder, it showed that the cockpit door had never been opened during that flight.
Is that right?
So wait a minute. How'd the hijackers get to the control?
Is that right?
Get into the into the cockpit.
Well, I did have I got an email that just came in, and he said, I have I should open up the email to see who it came from. I apologize, but he says that he's a pilot and he has LORAN, and it's very easy to program in that possibly the hijackers did have some pretty good training to program in where they needed to go into the LORAN system. And I don't argue with that. That is possible.
Yes, I'm not going to flatly say that can't happen, but
Right.
all I know is that I've got several friends who are still flying commercial airliners and have flown 757s and 737s, and they tell me that they tried to do the same thing on linked trainers and they couldn't make it work. And these are trained pilots.
I'm just going to bang through some of these. AA-77 lost radio contact 45 minutes before it allegedly hit the Pentagon, 25 minutes after the second plane hit the World Trade Center, and they said, BS. And I agree with that. What do you think about that comment?
Yeah. I'm sorry, run through that again.
That American Airlines 77 that hit the Pentagon lost radio contact 45 minutes before it had hit the Pentagon, and 25 minutes after the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And I guess the point being made here is there's no way that a rogue plane like that has lost radio contact with anybody is entering the airspace of Washington, D.C. without being shot down.
Well, that's another thing. See, I was an award-winning military writer, and I know about aviation, I know about military, and I'll tell you the Pentagon is the most protected building in the world. They have automated anti-aircraft missile batteries there. And if you fly into the no-fly zone over the Pentagon and you're not broadcasting a friendly transponder signal, they just open up on you. How come Flight 77 wasn't shot down approaching the Pentagon? And then that brings us to the little incident with then Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta, who testified to the 9/11 Commission. It conveniently left this out of their report, but it is on the record. He said he went into the control room there, or the command center at the White House, and Dick Cheney was in charge. And he said while he was in there, a young man came running in and said, the plane's 50 miles out. And then he came back in a few minutes later and he said, the plane's 30 miles out. And then he came in a little later and he said, the plane's 20 miles out. He said, do the orders still stand? And he said, Dick Cheney, in a very angry tone, said, what makes you think the orders don't still stand? So the guy turned around and went out, and then the next thing he knew, the plane had crashed into the Pentagon. Now, I would like to know, what were these orders? If the orders were to shoot the plane down, why didn't they do it? If the orders were not to shoot the plane down, then what's that all about?
Now, are you saying, and I've seen enough movies and I've heard about that, but all of the anti-aircraft missile batteries, which are on top of the White House, we know that. They're on top of the Pentagon. We know that. I'm sure the Capitol building has got it too as well, and a few other places in D.C. But they are fully automatic, aren't they? I mean,
right.
There is no if
you violate the airspace, they will fire on you.
Nobody can stop it, right? I don't think.
Unless there's a kill switch somewhere.
Or you unplug it from the wall, and I'm not being facetious, but
over the power cord.
Right. I mean, how would that be done? It's fully automatic, and that's why, we feel comforted in that fact. Right. Okay. Let me go through some more of these emails. It says, let's see, not to mention, as Jim's picks point out, the hole and debris and damage at the Pentagon in no way match a jumbo jet.
Well, show him that picture.
Yeah, well,
this is the picture most people don't ever get to see, but it's on your website right now.
Okay.
I sent it to you.
Okay, let me look at it here.
It is the top second from the left.
On the top row.
You can see the flames coming out of the window of the west corner of the Pentagon.
Right.
And you can see in the foreground a white car, and the paint is still there. It's still white. It's just smoking on one side. You see some debris, and then bracketed in that red line is you can see the hole in the west wall of the Pentagon before the wall collapsed, okay? Now, after the wall collapsed, there was a whole big V section there, and you could say, oh, a plane hit that, and that sounds believable. But now, if you look at this picture, that is the hole, and it's at ground level, and you can even see the windows. Look in the center up of the red box. There's a window with glass still in it, okay? So the hole is only about 1 story, about 12 foot tall, and it's only about 20 foot wide. Now, if you look at the picture next to it, you'll see an airplane superimposed over the picture of the little hole in the Pentagon, and you can plainly see that it doesn't fit. Okay, you got a plane with 125-foot wingspan and a 40-foot high tail, and it's supposed to go in this 12-foot by 20-foot hole. Come on, folks.
Yeah, when you go back...
Use your own head a little bit.
Exactly.
You know?
When you go back to the previous picture, the one that shows the burning car at the Pentagon, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. And trust me, I'm not the brightest guy. There's a lot of people smarter than me. But I look at this picture, and there's a couple of really curious things. Where are the marks? I don't care if there's no broken brick. But where are the marks on this building from the wings? I don't see it. I see where supposedly the body of the aircraft, but there should be.
Well, forget the wings.
But hold on, Jim.
Aluminum, and it is.
Yes,
they'd break off.
But
what I want to know is where are the 2 giant holes representing those 2-ton
motors,
jet engines.
Yes,
yes. with the titanium steel blades.
Well, let's say that
now, again. Let's just use our head here.
Go ahead.
You got a plane coming in at 400 or 500 miles an hour, and it smacks at ground level, which is kind of impossible anyway, because a wide-body jet like that pushes an air cushion in front of it. That's why it has to slow down to land. You don't come in at full speed and get that close to the earth. There's an air cushion that won't allow you to do that.
Right.
But let's say somehow you overcome that, and you smack the steel-reinforced cement wall of the Pentagon, and you've got these 2-ton jet engines, okay? Only one of 2 things should happen. The most probable is that they're going to hit that wall and they're going to drop off, and those jet engines should be laying there in front of the Pentagon. But they're not. Okay, so that means the only other possibility is that there was enough momentum and velocity that they just punched those 2 big holes right through the Pentagon. But that's not there either. So obviously there's something going on here other than the official story.
Now, let's just say the engine's vaporized. Okay, they just disappeared. Okay, let's do that.
I'll say that, but they don't. That doesn't happen.
But let's
too many plane crashes.
Right.
The engines are always there.
So let's just say we'll give them that. They hit the wall. They just disappeared. They vaporized. Let's just say that. But I'm looking at this picture, and there's something that shouldn't be here, and that is that fence is still standing.
Right.
Now, so
a chain link fence. Now, wait a minute.
Yeah, a chain link fence.
That the airplane was so engulfed in heat and flame that it just melted away, leaving no evidence. But the little chain link fence is okay.
It's standing. I want that fence around my house because it'll obviously stop a plane. And yeah, I just find that totally curious that there's no. Let's just say, give everybody the benefit of the doubt on so many different facts, but there's no mark on the outside of the building. I know the Freemasons built a really strong building here, and I know they used the best of granite. Okay, all right. I'm willing to stretch things, but there's no marks, and that is where I feel weird. Now, what do you think?
You hit up on a critical point there, because supposedly, according to the official story, the plane dived in through this little bitty hole. The wings all folded back. The jet engine somehow disappeared. The tail folded down. It acted like a torpedo and just kind of tunneled into the building and then exploded and blew up and melted down to nothing.
Right.
Seats, wheel assemblies, nothing there. Now, the problem there is that I met with and personally talked with April Gallup, a woman who worked in the Pentagon, was there when something blew up, and she and her little son crawled through that hole to get out. And I'm going, now, wait a minute. If the plane is engulfed and is disintegrated, how does this human flesh and blood creature crawl through the hole and get out okay? And I asked April Gallup, I said, did you ever see an airplane or even any pieces of an airplane? And she said no. What she did see, though, was while she was recuperating in the hospital, she said she was visited by government guys in suits. And she said, she told me that she figured they were there to debrief her, to find out what she could tell them. She said, but she was kind of shocked to find out that they were there to keep telling her it was an airplane. You saw an airplane. It was an airplane. And all they doing was trying to get her to say it was an airplane.
Is that right?
Yep.
No. And there's one other thing. And you know what? I'll give this to you. Here's a little gift, but I'm sure you're aware of it. When the 737s went through World Trade Center, it was a perfect cutout. Perfect. You saw the wings, you saw the body, you saw the stabilizer, you saw a perfect cutout. Just like any Walt Disney cartoon when somebody runs through a wall and you got the, Daffy Duck or whatever, Donald Duck's cutout. Right. And you have that perfect outline of the plane. And it's not there on the Pentagon. And so how can you say it worked? It happened that way in one building, but it doesn't happen this way here. If the outline of the airplane was there on the side of the Pentagon, then we can all back up and go, man, that was one hell of a pilot. I don't know how he did it, but there it is. There's the evidence of it. But with the Pentagon
again, if you will, speaking of that gash in the North Tower of the World Trade Center, they said, oh, that's where the plane hit and it went in. Perfect outline of the plane, and then it too burst into flame, set the building on fire, burned up everything, and so the plane and all the people, everything is all just burned it up. And yet I can show you blow-ups that show people standing in that gash, in that cutout that you're talking about. People.
What
standing
about
there.
Another hold on for a second. Hi, Jimmy. Another fantastic guest. I had a question for Jim. Okay. When Gary McKinnon, you know what? I'm going to ask you, I'm going to read you this question here in a bit. Gary McKinnon is just a fascinating subject. But what about, this is the other thing, and then we can move on and maybe talk about WTC 7 a little bit, Building 7. But and again, and I warned you about this, we're going to run out of time. We're going to have to do a part 2 maybe in a couple of weeks, and that would be fantastic. But with all of the stuff that was going on in the United States that morning, with even L.A. shut down, the entire country shuts down, and everybody's freaking out. How can not one video surface of this plane hitting the Pentagon in real time? I'm talking about, forget about the security cameras. I can understand that. But what about news vans?
You can. I can't understand the security cameras.
Well,
There's about more than 80 of them.
But what about cell
phones? You think one of them got a decent shot. We haven't seen any of that.
No, we haven't. Why? What's the big deal?
Because it doesn't show an airplane hitting the Pentagon. That's why. It's that simple.
Yeah. Exactly. I just don't get it.
And what I loved is finally, that got to be an issue at one point, okay? The fact is that all these security cameras, and yet they wouldn't show us anything of a plane hitting the Pentagon. And so finally they made a big deal about the fact that they released 16 frames, okay? And they said, here's the plane hitting the Pentagon. And I'll never forget, because Bill O'Reilly, this media, establishment tool, has made a big deal about, hey, we can put all this to rest, here, all these conspiracy theorists and their ideas about no plane at the Pentagon. Here it is. The government has issued this film. We're going to show it tonight. Well, they ran the 16 frames, and you can see a blur, and you can see a lot of a puff of flame, a burst of flame. And even Bill O'Reilly, at the end of it, he says, well, I didn't really see a plane. No, you didn't. It's not there.
It doesn't exist. And I don't, unless you've got something to hide. One of the things that I will run into the ground on this program is this: as long as you, the man, keep your mouth shut and don't answer questions and leave it to us, we're going to write the story for you. We're going to fill in the blanks. You're allowing our imagination to run wild. And when you do that, then therefore all things are on the table. And if you don't like it, it's your own fault. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
So what about we've got a few other things I want to bounce around really quick. And again, thank you. It's been an amazing conversation. What about WTC 7? And what do you make of that? It's one thing to have a leap of faith with World Trade Center 1 and 2, but for 7 to come down when it wasn't touched by anything or anybody or that we know of.
47-story steel reinforced building, okay?
Yes.
We were talking earlier about the Windsor Hotel in Madrid, Spain.
Right.
Year or two after 9/11. It caught fire, and it burned out of control for 3 days, as opposed to Building 7, which collapsed just after a few hours.
Caused by a what?
Not been hit by an airplane.
Right.
Okay, and the Windsor Hotel, when it finally burned out, okay, the building, the framework, the steel was still there.
That's right.
It was still standing. There's never been a steel reinforced building in the history of the world that's been destroyed by fire. Okay? And yet we're told that, well, they had a little fire in Building 7, and, well, it just all fell down at free fall speed, which means if you had dropped a hammer off of the roof of Building 7, it hit the ground just about at the same speed that the whole building came down.
Right.
Which tells me, as one who has covered numerous building demolitions, that there was no support. There was nothing to impede the downward motion of the fall. And again, as a newspaper reporter covering building demolitions, and I've covered several of them, I didn't have the luxury of the TV guys who can take a picture and say, wow, see the building come down? Wasn't that cool?
Right.
No, I had to go and talk and actually do a story, which means I had to talk to the demolition experts, and I had to listen to how that you can't just take explosive and blow down a building. You have to use the right type of explosives. They have to be set off in just a certain sequence. You have to have just the correct load-bearing walls and pillars, and I mean, it's a very complicated, complex, and very exacting science, and it takes weeks to get a building prepped like that, okay? And the idea that a plane can hit up at the 80th floor in a 110-story building and the whole thing just falls down just flies in the face of all the experience we've ever had with building demolitions.
Yeah, they didn't crash into the first floor. You crash into the first floor, you got an argument. But at the top of the building, right, it doesn't make any sense. Now, I don't want to change our thought thing here, but Leslie tweeted about 15 minutes ago one of the points that I think is extraordinary about MH370. She says, I thought since the 1960s, the U.S. had ultra-sensitive microphones in the Pacific and Atlantic, so they would hear it crash. And she's brought up one brilliant point.
I think that's true.
That is true. It's called submarines. Yes. We've been tracking.
Well, what that comes back to is what we've already settled, which is somebody within the U.S. government knows what happens to that plane. They're not telling us, but somebody knows.
That's right. And we can track every ultra-silent, Soviet submarine that's quieter than ours. And they cruise around, and we've got every acoustic signature, and we know where they're going. And
you better believe we know where every Chinese submarine is.
Or let alone every tuna boat that's got that sensitive radar on it.
That's right. They probably even know where Jaws is.
They probably do. But yet a 777 can drop in the ocean, and it's silence. Absolute silence. Okay, so back to, I just thought that was a great point, so I wanted to get back to that.
It is a good point.
Now,
See, there again, there's somebody who has a memory and is actually applying some deductive reasoning.
Hey, this audience,
as opposed to sitting there and listening passively to the TV.
This audience on this show is the best, and they intimidate me all the time. They're way smarter than probably you and I combined. Look, I can't even talk.
On your toes.
Yeah. You have no idea. The email tomorrow is going to be extraordinary. So, but back to this. There's one other point that I thought that was amazing about that day. I was sitting in my condo in Sherman Oaks watching everything like everybody else, and I'm watching everything happen and unfold. But the last thing that I thought was going to happen was the buildings were going to fall down. I just thought that they had a fire to put out, and we had some hijackers that we had to figure out, and these planes. You know, I was being stupid. But I thought that that's what we were dealing with. And the last thing I thought, no, we have some fires going on 80 floors up. How are they going to get the fire hoses up there? That's what I was thinking. The last thing I thought about, and when the news broadcasters and everybody started talking about in the panic about these buildings are going to fall down, I just thought, how is that possible? They can't fall down. And that is, I'm sorry. And when I look back at it now, how stupid we all were that day during that broadcast. And
right. Well, you got to understand that you're talking here basically about mind control. And to successfully mind control someone, you first have to tear down all their thinking processes. Okay, this is why. When they try to get the spies to talk or whatever, they torture them, beat them up, okay? You torture somebody to the point to where they lose their identity, and then you build them back the way you want to do it. But first you have to traumatize them, okay? In a more gentler form, this is what happens when you go in the military, right? They cut off all your hair, shave off all your beard or whatever, put you in the same uniform just like the guy next to you. Don't allow any dissension or questioning. You just follow your orders, and they turn you into a good little robotic soldier. It's been going on since the year one. Okay, well, on 9/11, this whole nation was traumatized. So that day, while we're all watching TV, we're all traumatized, and we were open to all of the suggestion and all of the cover stories and all the explanations that were already pre-prepared. And when I say pre-prepared, let me tell you my little experience. About 2 hours after the attacks, and the attacks had stopped, Building 7 was still standing, but the two towers had collapsed. Okay, and I kept waiting to see, the other shoe that was going to drop, and nothing was dropping. So I had a little situation because my truck, the inspection sticker was out on it, and I needed to haul some stuff. So I went ahead and left the house, went and left the TV, got in the truck, was going up, but I turned it on National Public Radio to keep up with what was going on. And 2 hours, just 2 hours after the whole buildings had collapsed and everything, and everybody's still in shock, everybody's still trying to wonder what the heck happened, all of a sudden I hear on NPR that they've got a fellow from the Council on Foreign Relations on there. Unfortunately, when I caught that, I started listening, but I missed his name. But he comes on, he says, well, this is just terrible. This is a whole new kind of warfare. This is international terrorism. We've got to bind the nations together to combat this new type of danger, blah, 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 blah. So I go, So I take care of, get my inspection sticker. I come home and I start watching TV again. And by this time, it's like 3 hours after the thing. And here they've got Henry Kissinger, and they've got General Alexander. I'm in charge here, And these other guys, all Council on Foreign Relations people, they're on every channel, you CNN, Fox, you name it, there they are. And what are they saying? Well, this is a new type of warfare, and we must bind the nations together to combat this new danger to the international order. It's like they were all reading from the same script.
Yep.
They had it down. They knew what was going to happen, and they were prepared to put it into our little traumatized heads.
I had
9/11 was the Reichstag fire of modern America.
I had a guest on last week. His name's Dan Fogler. He's a Hollywood, star type actor. He's got a movie that just came out this last Friday, and you've seen his movies in the past, and no big deal there. But Dan said that morning he was woken up to the second plane hitting the tower, and he was, I think he said he was 10 blocks away, 6 blocks away. I don't know. I have to go back and listen to the broadcast. But anyway, so he wakes up with a concussion, vibrating his building. He wakes up, hears it, runs to the window, and he's watching the World Trade Centers burn. And so he turns on the news. All day long, he's sitting there listening to the news, watching what's going on in real time and listening to what's being spoken about. And he said, it was fascinating. He said he heard the broadcaster say WTC-2 has just come down. And he said he turns around and looks out the window and it's still standing. And he goes back and he's listening to the TV and he looks back out the window and he says to himself, what script is she reading from? Because obviously she's being told what to say because the building outside is still standing because I'm looking at it. He said it was at that moment that he realized something wasn't right. I wish I was there to feel it and see it like that in real time. But that was a bizarre thing for Dan to put out there in public because this, he's a public guy.
The same thing happened with the BBC that afternoon when they cut to their correspondent in New York.
The WTC-7 shot?
Yeah, where she announced that the World Trade Center 7, the Solomon Brothers building, had collapsed. And yet, over her shoulder, out the window, it's still standing there. It didn't collapse for almost another 30 minutes.
Still some of the most incredible video.
And that's another thing, too, that I distinctly remember was they caught up with New York then Mayor Rudy Giuliani. And he's covered with dust and everything, and he's coming down the street with all his entourage, and they're running along with their camera on him and everything. And he was going, yeah. He says, they didn't go to their brand new command center that was in Building 7. They went to a temporary command center, I think on Versey Street. And he said, we were at this temporary center. He said, a young man ran in and said, the buildings are coming down. You have to evacuate. And he said, we were in the process of evacuating when the South Tower came down. And, of course, even right then, I'm going, wait a minute. What about those poor firemen in there? Why didn't somebody tell them the building was coming down? And I want to know who's this young man who came in and told him to clear out because the building's coming down before it came down. And why didn't they tell anybody else that?
I just have to say really quick, publicly, Leslie, I apologize, man. Leslie just tweeted, "Church, I'm a dude." I apologize. I so humbly apologize. Now,
sorry, Leslie.
Yeah, exactly. I so apologize. So, okay. Now let me back up, and we only have. Is it okay? Can I get you to just write out the end, and we'll go for another 10 minutes? You got it in you?
I'll struggle through.
Okay, so Lou just said, Brad sent this email, and I've just got to read this to you out loud because it's really funny. He says, let me open this up. He says, Jimmy, love your show. Sometimes it makes me want to pull out my hair, but I love it. Keep up the great work. And what Brad is referring to is he's rapid firing in these emails to the producers, trying to get them in here to me about there were jet engines that CNN had shown on the front lawn of the Pentagon. He said also that the plane cartwheeled into the building, and that's why there's no plane marks. And I want to say this really quick, Brad. I hear you. I understand what you're saying, and we'll have Jim talk about this in a second. But that video that the Pentagon released, that plane is not cartwheeling into anything.
There's no cartwheeling.
No, it's going straight in like a missile.
This is another case, and I'm not saying this is the case of the guy sending the message. He probably picked that up from somewhere, but this is another case like the driver shot Kennedy or or whatever, or the jet effect. You know, he gets shot from the front, so he falls to the rear. But this is a case of somebody surmising and theorizing. Okay, the fact is, and this is pretty interesting actually, is that the initial reports said the plane did hit the ground and then ricochet, bounce into the building. I suppose they were trying to explain why it was so low, why the hole was so low.
Right.
But the problem there was that there were some local firemen who had been out on a call, and they heard the alarm about the Pentagon, and they diverted, and they were there very, very quickly. And they were running around trying to put out the fire and everything. And there are photographs of all this. They were in those yellow fire trucks, and they had their cell phone cameras in there and their little pocket cameras, and they were taking pictures. And so the initial story was the plane hit the ground and ricocheted into the building. But before that day was over, these pictures are bouncing around the internet showing the front lawn of the Pentagon is all perfectly green grass.
That's right.
Okay, and only later did some pieces of wreckage show up, but none of them bigger than a piece that one person could carry. So there's some people who theorize that they planted some of that wreckage. Okay, but I guarantee you there were no jet engines lying on the lawn, and there was no evidence that the plane hit the ground and then ricocheted into the building.
I have a hard time because we've all played in a sandbox and we've all thrown cars and planes around as children, and we know what a cartwheeling plane whizzing through the air looks like. And if something like that, you know, like some kind of windmill, you know, effect and it is spinning into the Pentagon, that doesn't hold water, only because they're trying to tell us that little pinhole was the body of the plane going through the Pentagon. And that doesn't happen if something is cartwheeling or pinwheeling or, you know, swirling into, ricocheting into it. No, I just don't buy any of it. I just have a hard time.
Let me just put it this way, okay? Do this, and I'll shut up about the Pentagon.
Okay.
In every plane crash, the National Transportation Safety Board comes out. They pick up every piece of that aircraft, and they go to a big hangar and they reassemble it so they can find out what happened and try to prevent crashes like that in the future. Show me a picture of the pieces of Flight 77 in a hangar somewhere, and I'll shut up. But they haven't done it, and they're not, because it's not there.
Another radio station just tweeted in, so they're listening right now from PSN. They go, Jimmy, you're always welcome to call into our show. Or no, wait a minute. Is it Jim or Jimmy? They could be talking about either of us. So there you go. Now, there's so much stuff I want to touch upon. And let's get back to, let's change gears, and let's talk about Gary McKinnon for a second. I think that his story...
He looked into something he shouldn't have looked into.
Yes, he did, man. And this is the question, and it's an excellent one. And Gary is somebody that we can't let just go away. And I was contacted by his family when I talked to him. I talked about him a couple of months ago, and she wrote me and she said, look, we'll talk to Gary to see if he wants to come on the show. His mom will come on. But you know, Gary is just, you know, he kind of wants to move on. He's a little freaked out. And you know what? He got a lot of pressure from a couple of governments hanging above him, including the White House.
Is he still in the UK?
Yeah, he's still in London. He's still in London.
Okay.
So anyway.
Now, here's the thing that gets me about the Gary McKinnon case, and for those one or two listeners that don't know who we're talking about, Gary McKinnon was the hacker who hacked into the Pentagon's computers, and he was looking for evidence of UFOs. Okay, he wasn't trying to cause a problem, and instead he stumbled across the names, dates, places, commanding officers and stuff of what he describes as our space fleet. Okay, we've got stuff operating outside the Earth's atmosphere that we're not being told about. Okay,
right.
Now, my question is this: since the Pentagon has admitted that he wasn't doing anything harmful, he didn't harm any of the Pentagon's computers, It wasn't like he was trying to put a Trojan horse or virus or something in there. Why are they so adamant on trying to get him extradited over here so they can put him in prison for the rest of his life?
That's right.
Obviously, they don't want him talking about this.
He is, when you listen to him speak, and he's only done this a couple of times, and Carrie Cassidy, her interview with him, she went right over to the UK and just a fantastic interview that she did with him. And you sit and listen to him. The guy is telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And what were you and I talking about earlier today? The devil is in the details. That's it. Yep. That's it. You can tell when somebody is not telling the truth. And for Gary wasn't trying to do anything malicious. He was just fascinated with 3 letters, UFO. Yep. That's it. And he had a very simple way of, he installed computers. He wasn't a code writer. He wasn't anything. They just had a very specific little program that they were able to use to see if anybody used administrative level passwords, or if they left the computers stock. That's it. And so he was able to get into, if nobody changed their password, you could go to the administrative level, hit enter, and go in. So he was able to seek out the computers that hadn't had their passwords changed. That's it. Simple. And he was doing it with a 56K modem, nothing digital. So anyway, and go in, and he would search the word UFO. And he happened to weasel his way around into the Johnson Space Center, NASA computers, and get in there and find some things. And like you said, he came up with a list of different aeronauts and that were off-world and had different rankings than we used for our own terrestrial military. So that's his story in a nutshell. And the bottom line is, the last day before they shut him down and caught him, a picture was slowly resolving on his screen, and it showed a UFO out in our atmosphere, in orbit, outside our atmosphere. And right as he started to see that, the mouse was taken over on the computer and he was shut down. So this is the question. Well, we did all of that and didn't get to the question. The question is, hi, Jimmy. Another fantastic guest. I had a question for Jim. When Gary McKinnon hacked into the NASA computers, he came across 2 ships named USS, an extra S, LeMay, and the USS Hillenkotter. Notice both have an extra S in a secret space. Thank you, Damon. And I think that was the most telling thing for Gary, because nobody had ever talked about anything like this before. And it's the names on those ships. I guess it means United States Space Ship. Is that what you think it means?
That's what I would guess.
Yes, and Hillenkotter. How do you say Hillenkotter's last name? Is it Hillenkotter?
Hillenkotter.
It is Hillenkotter, right?
Yeah, the very first director of the CIA.
Pretty interesting, isn't it? And then you've got LeMay, who was head of the Air Force. LeMay, who was in
Air Command.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who was involved in all of our.
Now, let me ask you this, Jimmy.
Sure.
Do you believe that we may have a space command out there that they're not telling us about?
100%.
Well, I do too, because I've talked to a naval officer who said he went out there and came back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that something you want to talk about?
Well, I really can't, because I'm not supposed to divulge who he is.
Okay. Well, this is what I think.
But see, that's another thing. If I could tell everything, there's a difference between knowing something and proving something. Okay?
Right.
Marguerite Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, one of my favorite quotes out of that whole case was, she was in front of the Warren Commission, and they're saying, Ms. Oswald, what you're saying implicates the Secret Service. Can you prove any of that? And she said, gentlemen, if I could prove that, we wouldn't be here today.
Well, it's
so true.
It is. And there's one thing that I feel very confident in, and that is we have been building stuff out in in Earth's orbit for a long time. And
why do you think we dropped the space shuttle? That's old technology. That's outmoded technology.
And we have to have something out there that we've been working on as a bailout plan for any doomsday scenario, whether it is alien attack, whether it is a meteor shower, something crazy that's about to impact the Earth, that we probably have a stellar deep space star cruiser out there to get us onto, that's stocked with maybe seeds and food and history and ready to go at a moment's notice. And if you don't believe that is out there, then I think you're the crazy one. And that's the truth. That's how I honestly feel. Do I have proof of that? Like you said, no, but I believe it. I certainly do believe it.
Yeah. Well, if you had proof, you'd be having a whole different show tonight.
Oh man, what a great show. Let me see if there's any last minute things and then I'll let you go really quick. Jimmy, I really appreciate you doing that. Oh, you didn't have to. That was the apology from you and I to Leslie. Yeah, no problem. Speaking of devil in the details, David Paulides in, please. Oh, come on. Let's talk about today's show, Eugene. They should give McKinnon an award for pointing out their weaknesses. 100%.
Well, we should honor all the whistleblowers, the ones who are trying to get the system straightened out and tell us what's really going on. But instead, even the Obama administration, which Obama promised more transparency, and they prosecuted whistleblowers worse than the Bush administration.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can't trust the government to come clean on anything.
No, we can't. Every single week I see, it seems like, or every single show I say the same thing. Are we being lied to? Yeah.
Only constantly.
That's it. The only comfort that I have, Jim, is guys like you and an audience like we have, that we are able to listen to you and I, and then go and question what you and I say, and then go research yourself. That's it. You have to question everything. And not only, you don't have to believe anything that you and I say, but you know what? Listen. And my father said one thing to me when I was a very young kid, and I live these words every single day. The world is full of talkers, but no listeners. You need to listen before you talk. And that's the truth. Before you criticize this show or you or anybody else or the government or anything else, just listen and then make your move. That's all you got to do. Then you can go and question everything.
Well, you never learn anything by talking.
No, you don't.
You learn by listening. It's that simple, folks. And I'll tell you something else, too, that's beginning to bug me, I guess because I'm getting old. But even as a young man, I respected older people, even if they didn't have the education I had. I still respected them because they'd lived longer than I have. They probably knew something I didn't know. But today I see a lot of these young people, the old fogey. They don't listen to any older person, But as a reporter, I found out that everybody, from the lowest to the highest, everybody's got a story. And if you listen to their stories, you'll learn things.
A quick tweet just came in from Dale. It says, another great show. My mind has been expanded once again. Thank you, Jim Mars. And I, too, thank you, Jim.
Well, okay. First off, 2 messages here from Jim Mars. One, don't trust me. Don't believe a thing I say. But listen to me. Go out, research it for yourself, and then you won't have to worry if you're going to trust me or not. You'll know because you'll have found out for yourself. And how you do that, that's my message number 2. Buy my books.
Absolutely. And all of the links are there for everybody. You know where to go. Jim is also in our guest directory. All the links are there to his website. And again, he will be with us out in Contact in the Desert. And if you want to win some free tickets to that, just go over to the website, click and go and register. And come and hang out with Jim and I in August. It's going to be a good night. Thank you, Jim. And again, we got to do part 2 We only talked about 1% of the stuff that we thought we were going to talk about.
We just scratched the surface.
Absolutely, we did, my friend, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. I got to get out of here and get some stuff, some announcements done before the end of the show. So thank you very much.
Okay, adios.
And I'll talk to you over the weekend. Have a great one. All right. Yep, that's what I'm talking about right there. That is why you are here at Fade to Black here on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Listen, so many emails came in tonight. I really apologize not being able to get to it all. We didn't even get to any phone calls. And again, we just scratched the surface. But that, with a guy like Jim Mars, that's what you're going to do. You're going to have fun. You're going to learn something. You're going to hang out. Agree, disagree. That's not the point. The point is always to listen. And that is the beauty of Jimmy Church Radio. So now let me get to a couple of emails really quick. And I want to stress with everybody, by the way, please go and participate in that contest. And those passes are hard to come by. And we're working really closely with them out there. So please do that. It's going to be an exciting weekend. Okay, let me get to some of these last-minute emails. Okay, here we go. Hi, Jimmy. Ask Jim if he believes there was ever or had there been an alien whistleblower, sort of like an Edward Snowden. Actually, we were just talking about one with Gary McKinnon. And if so, what would the consequences be? For instance, will he believe it? Or are we so controlled that that part of our mind control is us not believing anything? Well, you know what? And that was from, who was that from? It's not signed. That's a great question, actually. Oh, it's from D.C. Okay. Yeah, it's a great question. The actual whistleblowers, we've had a couple on this show, but I would definitely say, if you stop and think about it, think about Rendlesham and think about what's going on there. Okay, this one is from BM. Enjoyed the conversation with you and Jim. He must be related to Bill Burns. Yeah, right on. So much to say that is interesting, not drivel. I hope he can find some time to join you again soon on other subjects. Jim is somebody that I've wanted on this show forever, and I listen to him speak so often, and I just thought about if there's a time I can get him on, we would have so much fun together. It's important to have a personality mesh too as well. And I agree with you. It was a great show tonight. Okay. Oh, some photographs of the plane. Here is the plane so you can see the tail as it hits. Okay. I'll look over all of this tonight, Brad. Absolutely. And we can talk about this tomorrow night. And that being said, I got to roll on out of here. Tomorrow night, as you know, is Preston Dennett. Let me get the music queued up here. Cueing the music. Tomorrow night, Preston Dennett and Steve Allen with the Stevensville Lights. That is going to be really cool. Preston Dennett, we're going to be talking about the Malibu discovery of the underwater base. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Night Watch with your host, Todd Sheets. Special thanks to Jim Mars. Todd's going to have 4 co-hosts and 11 guests. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. The show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music is by Doug Aldrich, this guy. Show intros performed by Space Boy. Thank you, Space Boy. Got some more Space Boy tracks coming up this week. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see you tomorrow night, man. Everybody be safe. See ya.